Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I hope I am audible. Welcome to the session, Introduction to Social Housing. It is a minute just after 9 o'clock. As we had indicated that we would want to start the session promptly at 9. So I would suggest, because I'm just looking at the participants list of people that have already joined the session. We're halfway through the mark in terms of the expected numbers. But given the amount of work that we want to give coverage to, I think, Hafi, if you're okay, I think we should start. I have just pressed the record button, which effectively says the session is also a recorded session. You'll notice that I have muted your mics and disabled your cameras. We're just doing that to secure the quality of this call. I think at various stages, we will give you those rights as and when that time comes. So welcome and thank you so much for making time to join with us today. My name is John Mofokeng. I work here at the SHRA and I'm the coordinator of this training program. We will be here for 2 days. Well, I say 2 days, but effectively on both days, our plan is to have this session run for at least 3 hours with, of course, intervals in between. So you'll get those body breaks in between. So anticipation is to then close the session around 12:30 roundabout if you have to plan your day. Really, I think what gave rise to us organizing this as one of the topics in the training program. In fact, this is not but the first time that we are running a topic of this nature. Is really to try and bring up the awareness and understanding in a whole lot of people that are potentially our partners, both from the private sector as delivery partners or delivery agents, but also the municipalities and provinces that are supposed to be playing a role in terms of the delivery of social housing in their respective localities. So the session, the bedrock of us coming up with a topic like this is primarily that to really unpack this concept and really break down and give a definition to this animal called social housing. Many of us might perhaps have heard about it at various courts and places, but I guess this session is a formal session to try and officially unpack as one of the topics that pertains to this program. We will be looking at a range of things in the next 2 days, amongst others, the legislative framework that informs the program, the institutional arrangements, and there we'll be looking at who are the role players, yourselves, potentially as delivery partners from whatever station that you are located. You become part of the institutional arrangements that are required by government to be able to deliver on this mandate of delivering social housing. We'll also look at to a certain degree the financial side of the business to say what are those what is required in terms of the operation of a business of a social housing in nature. So for the next 2 days, Khafi Vangejendelam will be leading this delivery as our lead facilitator. She comes with a wealth of experience right back in the mid-90s when this program was birthed. Khafi became one of those individuals who pioneered the origins of the program. When the social housing policy was written, Khafi was but amongst those people that were involved in that process. And the policy later on led to the promulgation of the Social Housing Act and subsequent regulations as well. So she brings with her quite a wealth of experience, that including running a social housing institution. I think in amongst many endeavors that she has contributed, she was one of the regulations manager here at the SHRA. But beyond that, she also had run a social housing institution. So she brings quite a wealth of information, which I hope will assist a whole lot of us in really unpacking and grasping what this concept is about. As I indicated, the program will be for the next 3 hours and tomorrow as well, with an anticipation to close the session at 12:30. I think with that intro, I would want to hand over the session to Hafi. But before I do, just to cite that given that the session is recorded, we will be recording tomorrow as well. And right at the end of the 2 days, we will then release to you a whole pack of handouts that include in these recordings. So the slides that we're going to be taking you through for the next 2 days, there is also the manual that we have written up on the thing, which will also be shared with you, and so forth. So those will come right at the end of us, perhaps in the new week, because I think in terms of getting the links to the recordings, that sometimes takes a bit of time. So let me make a commitment that in the new week, do anticipate that mail shot to come your way. In the event that there is anything pressing, given that I've muted you, please use the chat function to type your question or comment. We'll then just stop at that point and address those. Or if there's anything, again, as much pressing, you can also raise your hand. I think those who still have rights to will then give you time or acknowledge you at various points. But for now, for the sake of the quality of the call, all mics and cameras have been disabled. Hafi, I think at this point I want to hand over the session to just give me a indication that you can see the slides.
Thanks, John. Toko Dlamini has got a comment to say there's no audio on her side. Is there anyone else experiencing that problem? Because if there isn't, then Toko, I think it's possibly a problem on your side. I would suggest you go out and come back in and see if you have the same problem, or otherwise check your settings.
To everyone else, was I audible? I have just given, in fact, opened the mics. So just by a shout of yeah or a nay, just give us indication before we go straight into the program. Audio is clear on my side, Dozo says.
Yeah, audio is good.
Excellent. Yeah, I think, Togo, if you can just fiddle with the settings on your side, you should come right.
Okay,
right.
I just realized she can't hear, so I'm going to send her a chat.
Okay.
A message in the chat.
All right.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. John, thanks for the introduction. I suppose you give my age away, but on the other hand, I do this training for one reason, is that I want to impart my skills and my knowledge to young people. And I do hope that there's many Hafis in the room that will emanate from this training. That's my desire. So without going into another round of introductions, I just wanted everyone to introduce themselves very quickly and to also indicate what their expectations are. For those that are having audio problems at the moment, you're welcome to put your expectation in the chat. So if we can start, perhaps we should just mention names so that we can go quicker. John, would you be able to enable their mics at least and their cameras so that we can see whoever's talking and put a face to the name? Charlotte, we Charlotte in already? Yes. Charlotte, can you go first? Just your name, which organization you're from, and what your expectation is. Just one expectation, the main one. Charlotte, are you okay? John, have you enabled their mics and their cameras? Guys,
Okay.
can you only put your camera on when you are going to introduce yourself? Tepo, you've got your hand up.
Oh, no, I was just greeting everyone.
Okay, good morning.
I might as well introduce myself.
Okay, good.
Yes, my name is Sepo and I'm from an organization, it's an NPO called Sireleto Foundation. And through this training, I would like to know more about human settlement so that I can empower the less unfortunate by building them houses and accommodation and all that. Because I'm also in the construction incubation. See?
So you want to know more about the social housing program?
Yes.
Great, thanks, Tepo.
Okay.
And Tukozo, can we go next while we give Charlotte a chance to prepare?
Okay, morning everyone. My name is Ntokozo. I'm employed, but I just came across the interest of wanting to know more about the social housing developments, looking at the gap that we currently have in South Africa in terms of housing, affordable housing for those less fortunate. So I guess that's my intake for the day. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bukhadi, can you go next?
Good morning. I don't know if you can see my camera.
It's just a dark screen.
I'm just trying, let me see if I can switch it on again. Okay, I'm not sure what's happening here, but while we are at that, my name is Bokhadi Mabela. I'm a company called Thorium Projects. I also want to understand the social housing regulations and the policies on how to get involved in this SHI. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Charlotte, we're back to you.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, hi, my name is Charlotte. I am from Disability Empowerment Forum. I would like to know more about the social development, the social housing project, and how can the disabled community, are they included? How are they included, and how can they also benefit from this?
Thank you, Charlotte.
Thank you.
Colin? Okay, so Colin, can you just put your expectations into the chat because you cannot communicate with us. Ipeling, you've got your hand up, so okay, you also can't communicate. You're unable to unmute yourself. Okay, if you can introduce yourself in the chat and create your expectation. Can we move to Isisekelo Foundation?
Good morning. My name is Koli Sanongelo. I have a foundation called Isisekelo Foundation. We are based in KZN. We are a foundation that has social housing for children who are like that, need of housing in KZN areas. Our expectation is to really find out if our foundation could also be assisted by the social housing and to actually enlarge the foundation in that term.
Just to be clear, so you have a foundation that focuses on children, and
yes.
You'd like to know if the foundation can access social housing.
Yes, correct.
To augment what you're doing.
Absolutely.
Great. Okay.
Thank you.
If we move on to James, can you introduce yourself and your expectations, please? Cabello, are you around?
Hello,
No.
hello.
Hi,
Can you hear
Cabello. Yes, we can.
Apologies, guys. I'd like to introduce myself, but I'm driving currently, so I'm just listening to you guys in the background.
Don't worry, we'll wait until you when you can talk, or you can just talk to us in the chat once you settled. Kiriboni, can we move on to you?
Good day, good morning, everyone. My name is Kiriboni Criselda Mutawong from the Akansi Social House Institute, and my expectation for today is try to grasp as much information as I can in relation to social housing, as well as understanding the policies and the protocols that govern the social housing in general.
Thanks, Kiriboni. Kaletso?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, greetings, everyone. Good morning. My name is Lerato Maponya from the NPC Mwepatutsi project, and we just want to know how to work together with SHRA in creating social housing for the underprivileged. So we just want to know more information, policies, relations, and all that. Thank you.
Thanks. Linda?
Hi, how are you? My name is Linda. I'm just an individual. I'm interested in knowing more about establishing a social housing institute and meeting all the requirements in order to establish it. Thank you.
Thank you. Malcolm?
Hi there. My name is Malcolm Parker. Similar to Linda, I'm just an individual wanting to know more about social housing and how to establish a social housing organization. I'm operating in Cape Town and currently volunteering for some affordable housing organizations that work in informal settlements, and just wanting to learn more about the space. Thank you.
Thanks, Malcolm. Manogran?
Good morning, colleagues. My name is Mano Govender. I'm a semi-retired professional engineer, having completed 6 years as a development manager with a sister organization, the Housing Development Agency. My interest is in establishing an SHI, which looks at the gap housing, FLISP housing, and social housing. Thank you.
Thanks, Manogran. Moja Lefa?
Good morning, everybody. I am Nametso Applegreen from Applegreen Holdings. My expectation is to learn how to provide modern green housing units that are semi-luxurious for young working professionals and young families. Thank you.
Thanks. Ndle Lentle?
Good morning. My name is Asmilio. I am also an individual that's interested in establishing an SHI. So obviously I'll try to grasp more information just to follow the regulations and working vehicle of an SHI. Thank you.
Thank you. Nondumiso?
Good morning, everyone. Similar to Malcolm and Linda, just here to learn. I also do have a piece of land that I would like to develop, hopefully into a social housing, and maybe see how to get accreditation as a social housing institute.
Thank you. Ntokozo?
Hi, everyone. I did my intro at the beginning. Thank you.
Okay. Piange?
Good morning. My name is Pierre-Hane Maponya. I believe you wanted to say Pierre-Hane.
Pierre-Hane. Okay. Thank you.
Correct. Yes. I work for a construction company and I'm interacting with social housing, SHRA, in some of the projects that we do. So I thought by attending, I would have an idea of how to advise young people that I come across in townships and everywhere where we do development, so that they can also take advantage of programs that are there intending to help them penetrate the social housing environment.
Thanks. Hi, Ron.
Hello. Yeah, hi. Good morning, everybody. I'm Ron Paz from Kaberga. We're an established board of directors in affordable housing, and we are targeting specifically transformation of an inner city of our town. And we just look forward to closing down so we can get into the delivery as per our target. Thank you.
Thanks, Ron. Sikumbuzo.
I'm an individual. I've just been appointed to a board company that is basically developing and development project.
Sikumbuzo, we can't hear you. Either your mic is too soft, or otherwise, if you can put your expectation into the chat.
Okay, I'll do that then.
Okay. Sitembiso.
Yeah, hi, my name is Timbiso. I'm a development manager for a company called Sisinoto Holdings. We do affordable housing, some commercial developments as well. I'm just here to listen, possibly understand how to obviously register an SHI and an ODA.
Thanks. Tabo?
My name is Temba Ndebele Munyela. I'm a military veteran by whatever defect. I'm here to learn more about social housing and to understand actually how it functions, and that's it for now. Thanks.
Thank you. Toko? Toko, are you ready?
Well, morning everyone. I'm not sure if it's in Mutuba.
Okay, just go in the chat and introduce yourself and create your expectation in the chat. Tulani, are you ready to go? So there's Tulani Ndlovu and Tulani Koza. Whoever's ready first, it's fine.
Good morning, ma'am. It's Tulani Koza speaking. Thank you for the meeting. I'm just here to learn more about social housing. I'm currently with an organization called Capital Property Management. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Tulani Ndlovu, are you ready to go?
Tulani Ndlovu, my colleague, is currently on the phone. Can I please move on to the
Lilo, please can you mute yourself? Tracy, can you go next?
Hi everybody, my name is Tracy Herbst. I'm from a company called Central Developments. I'm here to understand the social housing framework and how this can be utilized to improve the delivery of social homes in South Africa. Thanks.
Thank you. Chepo? Chelilo, you've got to put your mic off. Thank you.
Sorry.
Tepo, can you go next? No? Chelilo, can you introduce yourself and let us know what your expectations are?
Morning, everyone. Sorry about the mic earlier. My name is Chililo. I'm new into this, and I'm just here to learn more about the processes for social housing.
Thank you. Kaletso, you had a question? Your hand is up?
Yes. I just want to introduce myself.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Kiretsoli Futswe. I run a logistics business. I also tried venturing into student accommodation in 2019 and I couldn't get funding. In PC that assists rural, township and informal settlement learners with transition from basic to higher education. So I noticed the disparities every day. So this is the business that I'm trying to get into. It's actually my second time here. I'm just trying to absorb as much as I can. Thank you.
Thanks, Colette. So is there anyone that hasn't introduced themselves that that I potentially missed or came in a little late? If not, let me check in the chat if there's any questions coming up. Yeah, no, I think we're fine. If there's no one else that wants to introduce themselves, then we're going to proceed. I'm going to try and summarize all the questions. Lucky, you have your hand up.
Yes, I would like to introduce myself. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead.
Oh, good morning, everyone. My name is Lucky Morosi. I am the representative of Agans Chava Social Housing Institute. We are here to learn how can we have the skills and the expertise to roll out the social housing program. So what we expect here, we want to participate in this program and we want to contribute to this program so that it can reach its goals and objectives. Thank you.
Thanks, Lucky. Colette, so is that an old hand of yours, or do you have another question?
No, thank you. I think it's an old in hand.
Okay, thanks. So just to summarize, most of the expectations was around wanting to learn more about social housing. Certainly, we are going to achieve that over the next 2 days. We are also going to understand what the regulatory framework is, or what the social housing policy is all about. We are going to have a brief overview of the business of a social housing institution or an ODA. There was a question around how can the disabled participate. So you'll be able to, once we go through the program, you will be able to see that the program is all encompassing of every type of person, whether it's someone with special needs or you know, if it's the aged or whatever, it's open to everyone. You will see the target market is a broad target market. The specific questions around whether the units actually cater for certain types of disabilities is something that you would get in a training called project packaging. I think John will talk more to that, but I will try and address some of it. We will also talk to how NGOs in the space of dealing with women or children, how they can participate in the program. I will try and bring that in as an extra spin. You will be able to work out how you can work with the SHRA to enable you to deliver social housing to become accredited. But we are not going in too much depth today and tomorrow about how to establish an SHI, how to run an SHI. That is contained in another training course called The Business of Social Housing. And John will be able to share with you if that program is going to, if that training program is going to happen soon or not. He'd be able to give you the dates. Then there was a question or an expectation around building a modern green accommodation for young professionals. I would imagine that there's a training program called project packaging, and therein they would you know, spend much more time on the technical specifications of social housing in terms of greening, energy efficiency, and all those things. So you would have to register for that training session to be able to get more information on the technical aspects of the physical units. Accreditation, again, it would be covered in the other training program called the Business of an SHI. That one takes you in detail as to how to become accredited, how to establish your business, how to gear up your business prior to you actually developing and managing stock. So I would recommend that those that are interested in accreditation, John will give, before we close off today, we will ask John to give you a sense of what other training is coming, whether these are on the near horizon, and I think you guys should prioritize coming to those. You would, the person that said they'd like to tell young people that need housing about the program and where they can go to get this type of housing, you'll certainly be able to get that out of today's training as well. There was also a question which is similar to the accreditation question, how do I register my SHI ODA? We will touch on it briefly, but the detail will be in the next training program, which is the business of social housing, because that talks to how to register, how to become accredited, and how to establish your business. I think I've covered everything that we've spoken about. I have not necessarily looked at all the expectations in the chat. When we do reflection, either at the close today or tomorrow morning, I will reflect those that I pick up from the chat. Other than that, I think we should proceed with the actual program. So this program is really about, let me just close this. It's an introduction to the program. We want to create an understanding of the program and how it works. But we also want to set it within the entire rental housing market, because it's a rental housing market and we but one instrument in that broader market. So we want to contextualize this program within the bigger space of rental housing. The information we give will benefit a wide range of an audience, whether it is public servants working within the Human Settlements Department or outside of it, within the cluster of human settlements, whether it's individuals that are looking for a career within the social housing sector, or individuals or institutions that are wanting to participate to either become a delivery agent or someone that is interested in the knock-on effect of delivering social housing, like people in construction, like professionals that service the sector, like property managers that service the sector. It is structured in a way that it is open to a wide audience. Thank you, John. Can we move on? So our program, we've gone through the welcome and introductions. We've gone through the expectations. We are going to move on to the rental housing market. We're then going to talk about the policy and this legislation that the social housing program is centered around. And then we're going to move on to the three instruments that drive the program. The one is a spatial instrument called the RZs. The second one is the financial instrument called the Consolidated Capital Grant, but the entire funding arrangement around it. And the last one is around the institutional arrangement. So which stakeholder plays what role? And where do you go to if you need certain things to enable you to participate in the program? We are then going to close off today, and then tomorrow we'll move on. We'll do some reflection of the previous day, see if some of the expectations have been met, see if there's any questions that arise out of today's session. We're going to continue with the institutional arrangements, because there's a wide range of institutions that you will have to work with if you are going to be the deliverer of social housing. And it's important that you understand who plays what role and which door to knock on to assist yourself to get started. And then we're going to go into an overview of how to become an SHI or an ODA, how to deliver your first project. It's not going to go into much depth because there is a project packaging training session that takes place that focuses entirely on it. So we're just going to skim the top of it in the session. Excuse me. And then we're going to talk about how to establish yourself as an SHI. What do you need in terms of legal form, your governance arrangements, your management arrangements, your organizational development arrangements. And that is going to take the the best of tomorrow. And then we're going to do a little poll on those that are within the room who, you know, after we've provided the training, has your view changed? Do you want to play a different role? Do you still want to participate? We just want to get a sense of where you're at, because we would like people to come back into the sector. We don't want to train. Yes, it is not for everybody, and those will go on and do other things. But those that are going to stay, how can we assist you going forward? What is your needs going to be? So is it more training in different areas? You know, what are those things that are uppermost in your mind, and what are the priorities? So we want to talk about very practical things about how you can proceed to the next stage. And then we're going to do a little evaluation and then close off tomorrow's session. Guys, if there's any questions, please just raise your hand, and I will keep on watching to see if there's anyone that have questions along the way. But please interrupt as you go along. I don't have a problem to stop and take a question. So why do we have this program called social housing? We have market failure. So the private rental market caters for income groups that are more stable, that are higher than the target market for social housing, and it excludes poorer people. And therefore, this program is here to address market failure in the main. What constitutes market failure is the fact that low to middle income people are largely excluded from the private rental market. So, you know, the average rental nationally is about 8,500 Rand per unit per month. And if we use the norm of paying a third of your income for your housing, it means that people that the private rental market are generally catering for is about 32,000. So people under 32,000 are generally excluded from that market because those rentals are out of their reach. And that's where social housing then comes in. We're also dealing with this phenomenon called rapid urbanization. So people moving into the bigger, larger municipalities and metropolitan municipalities in search of jobs or for jobs itself. And therefore, you have many people moving into the urban centers, and there's a press for accommodation. So you would either have people going into informal settlements or going into extended family households, or going into old buildings that are dilapidated, that are not habitable at all. And we've seen the consequences in the city of Joburg, where we've had fires in some of the buildings that have been occupied illegally. And we want to avoid that. We want to bring in a product that can catch those people coming into these large centers. We're also saying that where there is accommodation that is more affordable, generally the quality is poor, and it's inadequate for human habitat. We also have demand outstripping supply in the low to middle income housing. So you would find development happening in those sectional title units for higher incomes and so on, and not necessarily sufficient stock in the lower to middle income groups. You would also find that home ownership is becoming difficult to access now because interest rates are high. There's deposit requirements, there's high upfront cost in terms of your bond fees and your transfer fees, and that pushes more people into having to rent accommodation. So there's that other factor that creates more demand. And so in all of this, government has created instruments to catch those that are excluded from the private rental market. Social housing is one, you have the CREW program, and you have several other informal rental programs. We will go through the continuum of rental housing products and services that we find currently within our environment. Can we move on, John? So I just want to look at the housing market and to paint a picture for you of what we see. So we're looking at a particular area, we're looking at the Tongaat area. It's just a case study, it's just an example. And we found that the stats are showing that the average house price there is 905,000 Rand. The current interest rate is 11.75%. Normally you pay your bond over 20 years. So your bond cost is going to be 9,800 Rand a month. And that excludes your insurance cost and your other rates and taxes and all the other costs that comes with owning this home. So if you take 9,800 a month, you're going to get to 30-odd thousand Rand that you would have to earn to be able to buy a house in this area. You would also need about 56,000 Rand to pay your bond fees and your transfer fees. So you can then see that people earning about under 30-odd thousand are going to be excluded from this home ownership market. And therefore, where are those people going to go to? They're going to look for a rental product that is going to allow them to be able to pay 30% of the income into the rental. So this is just the ownership market. It's telling you a picture that people under 30-odd thousand are excluded. Can we move on, John? If you look at the average rental in KZN as a province, the average rental is 8,817. And that was in 2023. I haven't pulled out the latest stat in the first quarter of 2024, but I would imagine it's a similar amount. So again, you would have to earn above 26,000 Rand a month to be able to afford the average rent in KZN, meaning that people earning under 26,000 are excluded from the private market largely. And therefore, social housing would have to come in with rentals that can cater for people earning under that amount. So you can see from an affordability point of view, the private rental market and the private home ownership market is largely excluding people earning under 26,000 and in fact under 30,000. And so that's where social housing comes in. Can we move on? So if you look at the rental housing market, these are the products that we pick up in the rental housing market space. You would have an informal rental housing shack. Generally, people would pay between 150 Rand up to 1,500 Rand to rent a shack in an informal settlement. You would also find that you have an informal rental shack within a housing situation, a formal housing situation. And there again, the rental would range from anything between 600 and 2,000 Rand a month. Then you have emergency rental accommodation, which the municipalities generally provide when there is an emergency like a fire or a weather, something that happens within the weather patterns. And it's temporary in nature. The physical structure is temporary in the main, and it is something that people would transit through. However, we know that the emergency housing that has been put on the ground largely becomes almost permanent housing because municipalities take quite a long time to rehouse those people in permanent structures because of the long waiting list that we have. Then you get transitional dormitory type of housing. So it is just a bed in a large dormitory. And generally it works on a night by night basis. So a person will come in at 6 o'clock at night, they would get a shower and a bed, and they would have to move out by 6 o'clock the next morning, and they would pay so much per night. In the larger centers like the Johannesburg CBD and in eThekwini, you will find some of this type of housing happening. And generally it's about 15 Rand a night that you would pay. You may get something to eat, the bed and the shower. Then you get your communal type of housing. Again, it's more prevalent in your inner cities, mainly in Johannesburg, where you get a 12 square meter room and you get communal ablution and communal kitchen facilities. And that comes in at about 350 to 700 Rand per room per month. Your next step in this continuum is your crew housing, which is a municipal public housing stock program. And generally those rentals are no longer 350, but I think it comes in more at 500 to 750. And those cater for lower income groups as well. Then you get your student accommodation, which is normally at about 2,700, which is that NAFSIS grant that the students get that covers this cost. And generally, it's a room with shared ablution and kitchen facilities that the students will get. Then you get your social housing, which is generally between a 30, well, now it's between 18 square meters and 65 square meters. The rentals start at about 550 and goes up to about 7,000 Rand per month, depending on your income. It caters for people earning between 1,850 and 22,000 Rand household income per month. And then you have private rental that comes in at above 3,500 up to any amount, no ceiling to it. You then get investment rental where people buy units to rent out and to let out to the market. Those are also generally in the private sector space and generally from 5,000 Rand upwards. And then you get your luxury rental accommodation that starts at about 25,000 and goes up to 100,000. So if you look at this, I don't want to call it a ladder because people will move up and down this continuum. I mean, you get a better job, you move to the private rental market. You lose your job or you get demoted, you may move to social housing. You may become unemployed and you move out of the ladder totally, you know, into something else where you won't have to pay a monthly rental. So this is what our housing rental market looks like. And it's important for you to understand it and to see where social housing fits in the picture. Thanks, John. So in all of this, price sensitivity is critical, right? It remains the most important aspect of a tenant. The tenant will enter into a rental product that they can afford to pay. And the second most important thing to a tenant is that the place that they move into must have security and that it must be located close to where they work, close to where the kids go to school, you know, close to where they can do their shopping. And so those are the three important factors that we pick up in the social housing space that tenants value. They value, first of all, the pricing of the product, the services that you're offering within that product. Secondly, the security that your project offers. And thirdly, its location and proximity to other amenities, especially their jobs and the places where the kids have to go to school and where they can buy their daily things that they need to live. And that was a study that was done by the Center of Affordable Housing, CAF, a little while ago, a few years ago. But it's also something that we pick up as we go along and we work in social housing and we do our tenant satisfaction surveys. They are telling us pretty much the same thing. Can we move on? So, you know, this is what this is what we avoid in social housing. We believe that this is not humane living conditions. It's overcrowded. It's one room serves many purposes. It's the bathroom, it's the kitchen, it's the bedroom, it's the everything. And in any case, it is not secure. It is not safe. You can see exposed plumbing. You know, you can see the place is not giving you a good habitat. And so this is exactly what we're moving away from by producing social housing for poorer people to give them dignity. Can we move on, John? This is another thing. You will find that our social housing program is an urban housing program. The locality of your project is extremely important. It has got to be within in a restructuring zone. We're going to talk to you at length about restructuring zones, but the broader objective of the program is that we want to move away from the spatial planning dispensation. So what does this picture tell you? It tells you that there's a buffer strip in the middle, which separates the rich from the poor. You would see that the rich side is leafy, it's open, it's not overcrowded, it's got a lot of green in between it. And when you look on the other side of the buffer strip where the poor people are living, it's dense, it's overpopulated, there's no amenities, there's no greening, there's no proper roads. And so we want to break this buffer strip. We want to break this apartheid spatial planning dispensation, and we want to mix it up. We want to bring people of different incomes and classes to live together so that poor people can also aspire to become somebody and to be also just treated generally better in society. So this picture tells you, and this is a picture that it's across South Africa. It's not just this picture. This picture is everywhere. And this picture has not been totally broken yet, right? It has not been broken yet. Those buffer strips, it's either a main road that separates the rich from the poor, or it's this type of a river or a estuary or a railway station. It's always one of those things that separate the one side from the other. You got Sandton, you got Alexandria. I mean, I can name suburbs in the country where we see this exact same picture. This program is one of the only housing instruments that attempts to break this pattern. And we can go on about not only the spatial aspect to it, we can talk about the societal aspects to it, where people living on the other side, they believe that they are poor, they're going to be born poor, they're going to die poor. They don't know what's on the other side of this buffer strip. They don't know that they can be educated, they can become a somebody, they can improve their life situation and that of their kids as well. And so they live in this abject poverty and they die in it. And we want to break, we need to break that. We 30 years later, we believe the social housing program does that. Where social housing is successful, it's absolutely, for me, I even use the word magical, because if you go to a social housing estate that works well and you park your car outside those estates and you see the community at work, you see people coming out the front gate, getting into a taxi, going to their work or walking to their work, kids walking across the road to the school, and then you just know that this program is doing what it was meant to do. So yes, we want to reverse the spatial pattern of the past that we've inherited from the apartheid time. Can we move on, John? And can we move back to that picture, John? This is what we've created, guys? This is what the social housing program does. This project looks no different to a private sectional title project. I'm sure many of you will agree with me. Ron, you in the room, you know this is in your hometown in Gebega. It is there, you know, it's not a picture that we've taken from Europe somewhere or from a sectional title. This is a social housing project, and this is what we aspire it to be. And we'll hear more about what else, because here you're just seeing a building. You're not seeing the people within the building. And when we talk about the people within the building and how their lives have improved because we've put this housing here, you're going to see what this program can achieve. Thanks, John. So by definition, this is what a social housing program is all about. It's a rental or cooperative housing option. And when we talk about rental, we're talking about rental in perpetuity. So there's no ownership. It will never be ownership. It's rental forever. It's for low income persons. We're talking about people earning between 1,850 and 22,000 Rand household income per month. At a level of scale and built form. So we're talking about medium density, 3 to 4 story walk-ups or high rise. And we're talking about a critical number of units. So yes, you can do 5 units, but it's not going to give you critical mass. It's not going to make you sustainable as an SHI or an ODA, and you're not going to get economies of scale. So we're talking about projects of 3 to 500 to 1,000 units at a time. That's going to give you all of those things that I've just mentioned. 4, it's an institutionalized management arrangement, which is provided by accredited social housing institutions in accredited social housing projects. So you either got to be an SHI that has got to develop and manage the stock, or you can be an ODA that develops the stock and outsources the management or does the management in-house. That's what they mean by accredited institutions and accredited projects. By accredited projects, we mean that the projects must be located within a restructuring zone, and it must be supported by the STRA, the municipality, and the province. And it must happen in a designated restructuring zone. So from time to time, the STRA and others within the municipality and the provinces would do, when they do their SDFs, their spatial development frameworks, they would look at and see where their municipal areas are growing, where the economic nodes are, and they would identify that residential nodes are to be located where the municipality is growing to. And within those areas of growth, they will then identify the spatial instrument called a restructuring zone, where they feel social housing should come into. Because remember, when there's economic growth in a certain part of your municipality, it means jobs are created there. It means that people would need housing there where they work, and therefore social housing would be required. So from time to time, you would see these restructuring zones being adjusted. They would create new ones where there's new development areas within municipalities. And every 5 years, you would see that there are new restructuring zones demarcated. This is one of the handouts, John, that we need to send, is a list of all the restructuring zones. So those that are interested to become an SHI or an ODA, please look at that list. Look for land within those zones. They've got to be within the zones. And that is where you would be developing social housing. And where those zones are demarcated, we're going to take you through exactly what we look for to demarcate a zone. Can we move on? So the characteristics of the program, we must be very clear today. It excludes any form of ownership. No rent to buy, rent to own, rent to anything, nothing. It's rental in perpetuity. The second characteristic is it's not an option for people who can't afford to pay rent. Because rental by its very nature means there's a unit, there's a person that can afford to pay rent on a monthly basis. So it's not people earning under that 1850 would qualify for RTP housing, but they wouldn't qualify for a rental product. It embraces a range of other services. The reason why it does, and that is why we have SHIs or ODAs. We can't take a Trafalgar property to manage social housing, because what they do is they merely collect rental, sign a lease agreement, and do minimal maintenance. In the social housing program, people earning between 1850 and 5,500 are extremely vulnerable. You can just imagine from an economic point of view. They also come with many social ills. So the social housing management model has a built-in service that talks to community development and empowerment, that talks to community consultation or tenant consultation. And therefore, we have this extra added service that we offer that seeks to empower the lower income group of our social housing target market to allow them to assist them to uplift themselves. So in many cases, you would find someone earning in that income group has come from an informal settlement, extended family household, backyard shack arrangement. They've not been familiar with living in medium to high density. So education around just living in this type of environment is something that needs to happen. There's also issues of their income is so constrained that they don't know how to budget. They don't know who to pay first. They don't know, how much debt they should be making or not making. So there's all that educational aspects that the social housing institution or ODA would also provide. So much of, and also we just tell people, so someone's going to be retrenched that lives in your unit. You're going to try and link them up to a recruitment agent to see that they can keep their unit but earn an income. Those types of things are we do social work in this program, and we try to do it in a way that uplifts people so that they come out of earning 1850 in 5 years' time. Hopefully they've gained some type of an educational qualification because they're living close to an educational, a public education place, or we ourselves as SHIs have provided ABET training, and they move from becoming a domestic worker to becoming an administrator or a cashier at Pick n Pay or something like that. But we want to see that transformation of the person that's in the lowest income groups to improve their life and their livelihood. We also say that residents must be involved. So, you know, rental by its very nature sends out a message to say, I'm renting, I don't own this place, I don't have to look after it. We want to move away from that type of mentality. But we also say to you that residents' involvement doesn't mean that they must sit on the board of your SHI, that they must have community, what do you call these, tenant committees. We know in the sector over the last 30 years, these things have not worked. A tenant can't sit on your board for the sole reason is that when you're taking a decision around rental increases, they are conflicted because they're a tenant, they wouldn't want an increase. That's the reason why they don't sit in your governance structure. The second thing is tenant committees don't work. It only works when they want to fight with you as an SHI. And so we have other ways and means of doing tenant empowerment, having consulting with tenants. We have very smart ways of doing it now, and they exclude tenant committees and they exclude tenants sitting on your board. And then also it's the regenerating of an area that forms part. So it's not only regeneration, it's also revitalizing areas. So you have the old CBDs where there's all these dilapidated businesses, I mean, office buildings and hotels and other residential buildings. We can take those buildings into social housing. We can use our grant to refurbish them, and we can make them nice and smart for people to live well in them. So we can regenerate areas, but we can also reverse that apartheid spatial planning dispensation and bring people into the cities to be close to where they live and work and play and pray and all of those good things. Thanks, John. Can we move on? We also target a diverse resident population. So we have people earning 1850 that would live next to someone earning 22,000. We also focus on providing people with special needs requirements, like we have the ramps and the broad, you know, the kitchen areas with the bars and the bathrooms with the special handles and rails and things like that. We're able to produce some of our units with those things in it that will enable us to accommodate people with special needs, people with that other aged, older people, and so on. And so our product offering offers all of those things. I want to go back to targeting the diverse resident population. So you have a person earning 1850. If you think in practical terms, what does that person earning 1850 do? It's someone that's getting a grant. It's someone that's potentially doing child work, working 3 days a week as a gardener or a domestic worker or a cleaner somewhere. It's someone generally that is not in permanent employment, that's income is precarious, that doesn't necessarily have the education to be able to do something that is more in a permanent environment. But that person could be living next to someone that's earning 22,000 Rand a month. And that person could be a town planner. It could be a supervisor in a manufacturing environment. What then happens when you mix these various income groups together? You would find that the people in the higher income groups can motivate the people in the lower income groups to either go and get education, to do something about their life situation that will improve their income and that will allow them to do more things and educate their kids more better and be healthier and those things. So you can see that we're mixing incomes, we're mixing races, we're mixing different classes of society together so that the poorer people can aspire to become those higher income groups and motivate them. And so that is what we're also talking about. We also say there is a variety of tenure choices. So there is the co-ops that can come in. That's a shared ownership model that sits within the social housing program. It has been extremely unsuccessful. We do not have one co-op in South Africa that works, and therefore it's not something that we find in social housing, and that is why we talk of rental in perpetuity as being the only program. But we also want to let you know that it does include co-ops, but our training really doesn't focus much on the co-op because the model just hasn't worked in South Africa for a number of reasons, and I don't want to go into it because it'll take us another day to understand that. And then we're also saying that it includes a variety of housing choices. So if I had to use a BNG RDP type of product in comparison to a social housing product, the RDP or BNG product is generally a 40 square meter house. It has a kitchen, a communal area, and 2 bedrooms. Now, it doesn't take into account what the size of the family is, what that family's needs are there special needs. It's just rows and rows of the same houses you get allocated, irrespective of whether that house meets your needs or not as a poor person. In social housing, you have a choice. You can have a nano unit, which is 18 square meters. You can have a 30 square meter bachelor. You can have a 35 square meter 1 bedroom. You can have a 2 bedroom, a 3 bedroom. You can choose which floor you want to live on, the first, second, or ground floor. You can choose what type of finishes. You'll pay more rent if it's a unit that has got more cupboards and so on. So you have a choice, and that choice allows different types of households or families to come into it and live in a unit that suits their housing need. And the locality of the various projects as well allows you to choose, because if you're on a waiting list for a BNG unit, you're going to be allocated a BNG house when the next one comes available. It's not necessarily going to be in the area where you would like to live. It's not going to meet your requirements in the large. It's just going to give you a house. It's going to be another number to you. Whereas in social housing, you can decide as a tenant, I want to live in the Joburg CBD. There's 3 projects there. There's Brickfields, there's Newtown, there's JP Oval. You want, which one is closer to your work. You can decide which type of unit you want to go into. And so therefore, you have a greater variety of choice to suit your circumstance, which most other subsidized housing instruments don't really cater for. And then also it can provide for mixed-use development. So I spoke about Brickfields. Now, if you guys are familiar with Johannesburg, under the Nelson Mandela Bridge, there's this massive social housing project of over 1,700 units that is a mixed project. So on the ground floor, there's shops. On the first floor, there's communal, like a community hall, a creche, a homework center, everything that the tenant population may need from a community perspective. And then you have your housing units that go up from the second floor upwards. So it can include other uses as well, and social housing could be a component of a broader development. Can we move on? So the objectives of the program are quite clear. We want social, economic, and spatial integration. We want, what do we mean by that? We want people to have, or tenants, to have access to transport, health, education, and recreational facilities, including economic activities such as shopping, jobs, and so on. And we want, within the estate, we want the tenants to have the right to a safe and secure environment. So we're not only interested in our project and the safety and security of our project, but we're also interested in the broader neighborhood within which our project is located. Because just imagine we build a project somewhere and outside the front gate is crime and drug selling of drugs and everything happening outside the gate. Nobody's going to want to come and live inside the project. So it's in the social housing institution's interest to also be involved in the neighborhood arrangement, to see that outside of the gates of the project, things are working. In the municipalities, there's no potholes, the street lights are working. There's none of those social ills happening. And that tenants must play a meaningful role in society. They must be active citizens. So they must also take responsibility. And they need education to understand what does it mean to become an active citizen. But in a nutshell, we're saying that tenants must live, work, play, and pray in the same area. They mustn't travel an hour to get to work, 2 hours to get to school, and all of those things, because then what would their quality of life be? And I want to use an analogy in this situation. So if there wasn't social housing, where would the person be that is earning 1,800 to 6,000 Rand a month? Most likely they would be in an informal settlement, informal backyard. Generally, it would be located very far from where they work, far from where the kids would go to school. And so if you had to picture this, a mother would have to get up 3 o'clock in the morning. She would have had to buy the bread the night before when she came from work, because there isn't a shop close by. She would make the lunch. She would try and get her kids to school between 5 and 6 in the morning. At the same time, she would then take a taxi and drive about an hour to the Joburg CBD to her place of work. The same thing would happen going back. She would only get home at about 8 o'clock at night if she ends work at 5:30, and she has an hour and a bit traveling to get back home. When she gets home, the kids would not have had supper, they would not have done their homework, but they would be ready to go to bed. That is what her life would be if there wasn't social housing. If she was in that Brickfields project in Newtown in Johannesburg, she would be able to get up at 6:30, 7 o'clock, go downstairs, buy the bread in the morning, fresh bread, go back upstairs, make the lunch, take the kids down, either to the creche on the first floor, or if they were going to a public school, take them to the ground floor, either walk to school or put them in a taxi to school, which would be 5 or 10 minutes at max. She herself would walk to work in the CBD, or she would take a taxi and within 5 or 10 minutes she would be at work. Can you see how transformed her life would be in comparison to what it would have been if she didn't have a social housing unit? So that is the counterfactual that I'm trying to describe to you, and that is what social housing buys to a poorer person. Thanks, John. Can we move on? So the primary objectives is to contribute to the national priority of restructuring South African society, to address the structural, economic, social, and spatial dysfunctionalities of the apartheid spatial planning or apartheid system. It then would contribute to the government's vision of economically empowered, non-racial, integrated society living in sustainable human settlements. This tells you that we're not building housing, right? We're building a lifestyle for poor people. It's also to improve and contribute towards the overall functioning of the housing sector. We saw that we have two markets in that continuum that I showed you. We have an informal market that gives you very inadequate housing, and then we have a formal market for the haves. And so we want to create one housing market. Through social housing and the CREW program, we want one formal housing market. And hopefully at some point we get to eradicate that informality that we see that is not humane or habitable. And we see, through building these housing, we'll be able to reduce that informality in housing. Can we move on? So to put that same previous slide in a picture, we have those three types of integration that we want to achieve. So from an economic point of view, we want to mix income groups. We want to counteract the slum situation. We want to create opportunity for social migration. From a social point of view, same thing. We want to mix the social status of people, mix those up. And we want to counteract that social segregation that is happening, where poor people live in an environment where there's a lot of social ills, and rich people live in an environment where they can enjoy the fruits of the city. All of the fruits of the city, poor people can't do that. And we want to create safe and secure neighborhoods. From a spatial point of view, we want to counteract that picture that I showed you of the haves and the have-nots. And we also want to create access. So we want poor people to know that they can access health facilities, education facilities, and all those facilities and amenities. The police station must be close by, clinics must be close by, libraries must be close by, they must be close to transportation, public transport. So, and all of these, the outcome would be inclusive and productive cities. Through that, it has to be densified and it has to be compact. Because the current situation where we take services far out to all these BNG and RDP projects are not sustainable. If we crowd our infrastructure into smaller areas and we densify and we go up, we would need less money to take water and electricity and roads and stormwater out to these far-flung areas. We crowd them into smaller areas and people live in a more dense environment. It's more sustainable and the cities become more productive. Can we move on, John? So let's look at the spatial restructuring. What does this restructuring zone do? It take poor people, mainly Black people, who live in far locations, closer to the economic areas where jobs exist. It is also a defined area that we demarcate where the economic activity is happening, and we put social housing in there so that people can live, work, pray in that area. And it also contributes towards city compaction. So we're saying crowd the services into a small area and we densify as we go up. It creates efficiency as well within the municipalities. Can we move on, John? There's also an economic impact of the social housing program in that it does contribute towards job creation. From a construction point of view, yes, it's temporary. From a long-term employment point of view, there's many jobs we create on the management side. There's letting staff, there's maintenance staff, there's security needed, there's gardening, there's cleaning. There's a whole lot of permanent jobs that are created as well. And it's not only job creation, but it's also economic revitalization, because if you take a person close to the center where all the jobs are, they are more employable. It's easier to get a job. When you're far flung out there and you have to go and look for a job in another area, it's much more difficult. From a social point of view, we've said that we want to mix races, we want to mix income groups. We mix income groups from 1850 to 22,000. And if we're doing a mixed use development, we'll have GAP, we'll have FLISP, we'll have private housing, all in one area. That even broadens that mixing of incomes and classes and races and so on. We're also saying that in our project, because we do our community development work, we reduce the rate of crime, we stabilize the community, we create environments that work, the urban infrastructure must work, we hold the municipality to account for street lighting, for potholes that are in the street, and all of those good things. We become active citizens. We also create a sense of belonging within our estates, that people want to live there, they want to stay there. You know, if we do get people that are dissatisfied, is because they want that unit to be turned into an ownership unit. They're so happy and satisfied that they actually want to own where they live. And that's why it's nice to do some FLISP on the side within your social housing project, so that those that have lived there 5 years, have improved their situation, but don't want to move out of that neighborhood, would have a product to move to. So the picture that we saw of that project in Port Elizabeth, I think it was Willowdean, they have FLISP on the side, on the outside of their project. And when you do want to move over but stay in the area, you then move from the rental product to a home ownership product. Because in rental, you can also save as you go along and use that savings to become an owner. So we do see the social housing program as being also a program where people move through. It doesn't mean that the subsidy stays with you. The subsidy stays with the SHI. You as a tenant can move through and go into another product. a government, a gap housing product or a FLIS product outside of the social housing. The social housing subsidy doesn't move with you. And then obviously it creates more well-functioning neighborhoods. So where we have a critical mass of social housing in a particular area, and I use some parts of Hillbrow as an example, where we have a critical mass of social housing in some parts of Hillbrow, you would see that those areas, those neighborhoods have changed. So other landlords will have to join the social housing program. They would manage their stock the way we manage it. Social housing landlords interact with other landlords in the area. They get together. They start agreeing what that neighborhood should look like. And they start removing the crime and the grime and making, holding the municipality to account for the urban management outside of the project within the neighborhood. And you will see a transformation happening within that neighborhood. But it doesn't always happen when you're just building 100 units in an area that is not a good area. It's not going to transform the area. You've got to get a critical mass of units within that area to be able to transform that area. So it does also improve neighborhoods. That is an impact of this program. And then it also improves the functioning of the housing market. So we're saying the more social housing we build in the rental housing continuum, the less informal, inhumane, uninhabitable rental housing products there will be, because people will then come into a formal housing product that is affordable to them. Can we move on, John? So the principles, again, very much like the objectives and the characteristics, we want to promote urban restructuring through social, spatial, and economic integration. These estates that we build must be well managed. You know, we have the legacy of public housing stock of the apartheid era that was poorly managed, poorly maintained, filled with all the social ills you can dream of. We don't want to see that in social housing. And that implies that the social housing institution has got to be very strong on the community and communication and tenant management aspects of their building. We're saying that is the core of their business. It must respond to local housing demand. What do we mean by that? Is that we must understand when we find a piece of land within a restructuring zone, we need to understand the people that will come into our project. What is their profile? What is the economic situation? What is their affordability situation? What is their household size situation? What is the incomes of the people coming in? So that we don't build a project with 2-bedroom units and then we don't have demand for 2-bedroom units only. So we do a market demand study. We understand the socio-economic and demographics of the people that would come into our project, and we build a project that responds to that demand. So understanding incomes, understanding employment, understanding household size, understanding the economic situation of the area, the geospatial situation of the area are all important factors. Those factors inform us as to what type of product we put on the ground. I think one of a few housing instruments that actually is a demand-driven program. We respond to what demand is and we put our projects, our units on the ground on the basis of what we're responding to, the need. And then obviously, we cater for a wide range of people working from low incomes up to middle income groups. And we support local economic development of the local community in various ways, not only by housing them, but also creating jobs within the local environment. Can we move on, John? We foster the creation of quality living environments. So we provide this extra education. We provide activities for the children because the child population is the biggest part of our population within any social housing estate. You have more children than what you have adults. And so how do we keep them busy? We have homework classes, we have computer rooms, we have sports activities for them, arts and all of those things. So we foster those neighborhoods or those estates that offer much more than just a roof over your head. It must be a safe, harmonious, and socially responsible environment. So remember, you're bringing different people from different parts of the city into your project. They come with their own baggage. Some have various types of problems, and you expect them to live together as a community. It doesn't happen by accident, it happens by design, and it happens by the programs that you are going to create as the social housing institution. We're also saying that these projects must be viable, not only financially, but they must be sustainable over the long term. So we talk about a critical mass. There must be enough rental income to cover your costs, to cover your debt that you're going to take over your property, and to do all these services that you said you're going to do. You must be able to do your rent collection, your maintenance, your asset management, your community development programs. All of those things must be funded out of the rental revenue that you're going to earn. You've got to do a financial model to make sure that it's a financially viable project. But at the same time, the project must be sustainable. You must have an organization with skills and systems that will enable you as an SHI to do all these good things. You must encourage the involvement of the private sector and it can happen at many levels, right? At one level is the professionals, the architect and so on, that services the contractor, that builds the project for you. That's involvement of the private sector. You could get private sector funding in. At a community level, at a tenant management level, yes, you would need the private sector to do some of the services for you. But at the same time, if you move into an area where there are offices, where there are retail, where there are others, you can also use those companies to make donations and make contributions towards your community development program. It's in their interest and it's in your best interest as well. It's a win-win situation. And then obviously we say through focus groups, you must facilitate the involvement of your tenants so that they also take ownership for the environment that they are in. Move on, John, thanks. And then lastly, it's also the fact that rental must be seen as a secure tenure option. You mustn't be able to just evict willy-nilly. You must follow the law. The tenants have rights and responsibilities. So do you have a social housing institution. And those rights and responsibilities must lead to security of tenure. Essentially, this is what this is saying. John, can you move on? From a management side of point of view, the social housing institution must ensure that you're transparent, you account for what you're doing. There must be efficiency of your administration, and you must provide good management of the stock and the related tenancies. You must also be responsible about how you use the public funds. You know, the SHRA will give 70% capital grant into your project. You must be responsible as to how you use that. And as a not-for-profit entity, you will be generating rental revenue. You've got to be responsible on what you spend that rental revenue on. And then obviously you must operate within the provisions of the legislative framework, because you're using public funds. You've got to ensure that you comply with the PFMA, the MFMA. Your procurement policy must be open and clear, transparent. You must be able to account for it. You can't be employing your brother and your sister and your relative in this type of environment. You've got to show how you have procured properly that complies with government procurement policies. I think that's all on principle. So now I want to take, John, if we can just take a 1-minute question and answer session. Do you see any names or any hands up?
I do. I see Luando's hand is up, and Sitembi Source one has just also come up. So ladies and gents, let us take questions, comments at this point. Rafi, I'm also just mindful of the time that perhaps after this we could maybe do a 5-minute body break.
Yes.
Before we continue with the next session. So let me allow the mics so that we can hear Luando and Sitembi, so and anyone else with a question or comment. Luando, please go unmute yourself.
Good morning and thank you very much, John. I raised my hand because I couldn't see the the shared screen at the time, but I do have a comment. First of all, I want to express my gratitude for being part of this, because I'm representing a company that has started a stokvel to try and raise equity so that more people can get to participate in these developments. That's one. Two, I didn't come in early enough to get the intro part. I just wanted to ask if this course is an accredited course. Just that for now. I'll come back with more questions later. Thank you very much.
All right, maybe just to straight shoot into that before we take, was it Temiso? No, as I indicated in the opening remarks, Londo, really the session for the next 2 days is to really unpack this concept so that we raise the awareness and the understanding of what this program is about. We not because as far as I understand the accreditation process with the CETAs and what have you, it says we also have to write tests and do all sorts of assessments of participants and so forth. No, that is not part of what we here to do. So at this point, it isn't an accredited program, and therefore there wouldn't be even issuing of certificates, even attendance certificates for that matter. I hope that helps. Let's take that next question or hand, Sitembiso. Just unmute yourself.
Yeah, hi. I hope you can hear me. Just a few questions. I guess the first one is obviously on the management side. You speak of obviously rental. I was just trying to understand rental escalations as to when you build them into the model, how high could you go? Because obviously, we're in an environment where your municipal charges are increasing at quite a high rate, and obviously your ops cost is also increasing at quite a high rate. So I guess my concern is obviously how high would you be able to escalate them with obviously the information that I have provided in the background? And I guess also my second question would relate to, would there be a supplier database to obviously get involved with other, how can I put it, other SHIs and ODAs? Because over and above the management and development, we also run an agency where obviously I know, as you spoke of, as these things get built, these units need to get let, and obviously you spoke of let's call it the aspirational consumer who moves from a she to a FLISP. So obviously we would be able to facilitate that kind of engagement. And sorry about hogging the mic, but my last question pertains to, as I said, we're also involved in the development side. On the consultants, the development and construction, we use our own team. Would we be able to choose our own consultants and utilize them within these projects, or would consultants be imposed upon an SHI or an ODA? Yeah, thanks for letting me a chance to speak.
All right, I think let's shoot at those, then we'll take after that, Rafi.
Okay, so the rent setting model and escalations, if you can park that question, it's on the slide on the screen, which we're going to cover immediately after our 5-minute break. So bear with us on that one. With regards to providing services to other SHIs or other ODAs operating in the space, the SHRA has got a responsibility to publish the public register of accredited social housing institutions. So you should be able to pick up that register off their website. And you would find the CEO's details and the phone, the landline number for that SHI. And you could potentially cold call them to say, this is the space we're in, we provide property development services or whatever the case may be. We talk to you. So certainly that opportunity is available, whether it's on the property management side or the property development side. It's certainly open and the registry is public. And whose mic is on? Lucky, can you switch your mic off, please, for a while? And then with regards to if you become an SHI or an ODA, how does the procurement work? So yes, you can work with people that you've worked in the past, but you must show that you have a procurement system. I would imagine that it would be a closed, invited type of a procurement system. And it's through that system that you'll be able to show that you have procured. But and what the SHRA does not allow, what the legislation does not allow, is for you to procure services of companies that are related to you where there's a potential for conflict of interest. Is there someone with a mic on that?
Yeah, I just picked it up. Sorry, Rafi, I did just disabled someone's mic. I'm sure you should be fine now.
Yeah.
Apologies for that.
So, Sindabisa, I hope that I've responded to in the main the questions that you have.
So, sorry, just a quick follow-up on your last point. You speak of family members and obviously people, you know, what about if your family members show competence? So let's say, because the way we've structured it, the development company is one arm, and then there's a property management company that's been around for 30 years. So that shows competence, but I am related to that property management company. I'm just trying to obviously assess the conflict today.
Okay, so in the case of an ODA, that is totally allowed, because what you would do is you would tie in both of those companies. One would be responsible for the development and the other one would be responsible potentially for the management, and you would come in as a group, right? In the case of a social housing institution, which is a not-for-profit type of entity, for instance, if you're sitting on the board of the SHI, and you're sitting on the board of the development company that you want to use to do the developments for you, to take on the role of developer, you'll be conflicted. And let me use an example. So for instance, you're sitting on the SHI board and the development company is not performing. You can't hit yourself over the knuckle to say, you know, how are you going to do that? Because you're conflicted, because you're sitting there and you're sitting here. So in the case of an SHI, there's a definite conflict. You cannot be even sitting on one SHI on another SHI, because say for instance, the SHRA has 500 grants for this year and both SHIs have a project of 500. Which one are you going to go with? You're conflicted, right? Because you're sitting on two SHIs. The same goes with the two companies that you have. If you can establish an SHI and either one of the companies or both of those companies that you sit on or you're a shareholder of is going to do business with the SHI, you're going to be conflicted, because if you don't perform, how are you going to fulfill your fiduciary duty as a board member of the SHI? But in an ODA situation, I don't see a conflict, because you could tie both in. The SHRA is happy to say, I'm doing business with this SPV, which is one of your companies, and but actually the development arm of my business or my separate company doing development work is then going to be tied into the SHRA agreement that says they also have a role to play. They're taking on the role of developer. So you come in as a holding company with your subsidiaries, and the subsidiaries are each playing a different role within the bigger picture.
Thanks for clearing that up.
Thanks. We had Lucky. They had a question, I think, John.
Yeah, Lucky, if you can just unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you. Well, my question was, how can we ensure as an SHIs that we continue to be successful in this program, and we grow and we learn and we get support from this program? We are not just maybe doing it maybe for a short-term purposes. We grow and we develop these units, not only maybe in our region, but we can also maybe move to other regions so that we can meet the targets, and our operation, they continue to maybe align with the requirements of SHRA.
Thanks, Lucky. So John, can I respond to this one? Okay. So the answer is double. It's two-barreled, put it that way. There must be certain skills and experience on your board and within your management team that is able to run the business of social housing. I may tell you that this is not a side business. It's not a business that you can run on the side and you're doing something else on the other side, or you're in employment and you're going to think you're going to do this on the side. This is a business, a proper business. It's a complicated business, but if it's done right, it is highly successful. So yes, we have a lot of bad examples within the sector where there's failure, but we have a lot of good examples where there's extreme success, even success that is better than the private sector rental success. So you got to do it right, and you can only do it right by having proper skills and experience within your organization at both the governance level and at a management and staffing level. You've got to have systems in place. You've got to go through the life cycle of an SHI where you establish yourself, you gear up yourself, and you actually then provide services and monitor your performance all along the way. Now, if you have the right skills and the right experience, you will then attend all. John has got a wide range of training programs. You get introduction to social housing, then you get taught how to become accredited. Then you get taught how to package a project and how to deliver a project, how to apply for the funding, how to then manage it. And there's several courses, how to do tenant management, how to do maintenance management, how to do rental management, how to do community development. All those training happens. You also have experienced SHIs that are willing to share their knowledge. You can send your new staff for experiential training to them. So it's a combination of things that will allow yourself to develop your organization. And the SHRA is there to provide that capacitation support. But it can only be provided to people that have the skills and experience to be able to understand this business and run such a business. I hope that answers your question, Lucky.
Yes, thank you for the answer. I think it's quite clear. Thank you.
John, so if there's no other questions, then let us break for 5 minutes. Or do you want to go 10 minutes?
Well, we can do 5 minutes. I'm just not sure. I mean, from amount of work that you still need to cover for the morning, how are we doing with that? Maybe just a 5-minute leg stretch. It's maybe even 7 minutes so that it rounds us off nicely to we come back at 5 to 11, or should we say 11 o'clock?
I think let's say 11 because I think I'm quite fine in terms of time.
Okay. All right. Don't log off. I know some of you are having load shedding challenges. Don't leave the session. But yeah, let's just come back at 11 o'clock on the dot to continue. Thank you.
John, can you prepare for the video to start off with?
You mean when we return?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I'll do that.
Thanks.
Right.
Okay then. Thanks.
Sweet.
Bye.
I'm just actually looking at the chat line. There are a few questions. I mean, Nossi is asking what is ODA.
Okay.
Peahane Maponya is asking, I'm not sure if I'm reading this question correctly. I don't see or hear explicitly the involvement of construction SMMEs during the construction of the units. Oh, okay. I think it might tie to, was it Tembiso's question earlier?
Yeah.
In terms of the involvement of the
construction sector. Okay.
Yes. And then someone just talked about them going on load shedding. Okay. can you have one or more sale agreements to achieve development of 300 to 500,000 units? That was lucky. And then I think someone is just asking about the recordings and the handouts. Thanks, James has responded to that. So anyone who may have missed that, yeah, the handouts will be shared with you post the 2 days. I'm just going up. I think this one of the stock fell, you dealt with it. I think it was it was Lwando. Property stock fell.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just I've got 3 questions then. What is an ODA? Construction, how do they participate? And then how many buildings or land parcels do you need to buy to get to 300 to 500 units?
Yes.
Okay.
Let me see. Wait, there's a bit more on the top. Good morning. My name is Tabang Mufugeng. I'm from Cosmopolitan, a property development company. I think I've heard about Cosmopolitan before.
Yes,
We have introduced social housing and want to know how to better integrate social housing. What can we do better and areas of improvement? It's quite a broad question.
Okay, but I think we should just get him to, I think, John, if you can open up, I ask him maybe to engage us on that question, and we can see, we can probe him to get to something more specific.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, they used to win a lot of awards before on your RDP type of project. So maybe they want to get into social housing, if it's the same people we're thinking about. And then let's see what it is that they want to understand better.
And there's a question or comment from Nondumiso. Says, my name is Nondumiso. I'm doing my research on social housing and intergovernmental relations. I'm here trying to learn. Okay, this is perhaps when you're doing the expectations. She says, I'm here trying to learn as to what can I re-social housing. Sure, if I understand that. I'm interested in experiences and perceptions of SHIs on the interaction with government entities across all three spheres, including the SHRA in terms of accreditation, support, and relations.
Yeah, I think I covered that under institutional arrangements, so she'll get those answers.
Yeah.
We talk about the PSC and all of that. It will come tomorrow.
Yeah, I think the rest at the top are more about people who are registering and introducing themselves, including their expectations.
Okay. Okay, I'll address those first 3 or 4, and I will also then speak to where that some of them, the answers are actually coming, or we're actually going to be covering those topics.
Yeah, and there was just this one, Hafida's just got in now from Togo. It says, what skills are required for setting up ODA/SHI, especially rental management and facilities management?
Okay. Okay, that is going to be covered tomorrow in any event.
Okay.
So John, I want to actually get to slide just before the municipal. I want to get to slide 49 by the close of business today, and then I'll start at 50 tomorrow morning.
I'm not sure if I'm able to track where you are on my side.
Okay.
No,
I'll track on my side because I am moving my slides as you're moving it, just in case I may have made a change. So as you move on, I'm also moving on. Okay, I'm just going to get me a cup of tea quickly.
Sure.
John, can we start by starting the video?
Yes. Tell me if you can see it on your side, Khafi.
Yeah, I see it. Can you put it onto that big screen?
Sure. I'm assuming that we have everyone back. So we're just gonna show you this 6-minute video. It just beautifully, summarizes and encapsulates what we've so far covered in terms of the of the content this morning. It's a video that is also available on our website. So in the event that you still want to see more of it, please visit our website as well. I hope the sound comes out okay as well. You give me an indication. Enjoy. That was that. Let me try and bring back that PowerPoint. Just give me an indication. Can you see the slide?
Yes, it's fine. So, John, we just had a few questions in the chat that I wanted to go through quite quickly. There was a question around what is an ODA. We're going to get to that tomorrow morning. There was a question around how does SMMEs participate in the construction element of the projects that are being developed. So projects are developed by SHIs or ODAs. They go through a procurement process to choose their contractors, and generally the contractors make provision for local SMME participation. So that is how construction happens, and generally about 30% of the main contractor would give out 30% of the contracts to SMMEs, but it's these private entities called SHIs or ODAs that go out and procure the contractor, who then has to bring in local SMMEs. How many sale agreements do you need to get to 300 to 500 units, Lucky? It depends on what you're looking for. If you get 5 hectares, you'd be able to do 500 units on one piece of land, because your densities for 3-4 story walk-up is about 110 to 120 units per hectare. If it is that you're building, if you're buying a property existing building, it would depend on how many units you're going to get out of that building. If you're getting 100 units out of that building, you would have to look at more buildings until you get to your 300 units or your 500 units. So it depends on what amount of units you can get out of a building that gets you to your 300 or your 500 units. I hope that makes sense to you. Please let me know if it does. Then intergovernment relationships, we are going to hear about that possibly this afternoon or tomorrow morning, where we talk about institutional arrangements and how government works together to create a one-stop shop. So that will come. Then there was a question around skills. What skills are required? We're going to talk about that tomorrow morning when we talk about SHIs and ODAs. And then there was a last question around who funds the market study. So when a SHI is established and developed, it would have to have a certain level of own equity to enable it to do that establishment. The SHA does give a grant to assist to pre-accreditation, gives a grant for staff care up whilst you're doing your first project. But to apply for the grant, the capital grant, you need to do a market study of where that project is located. Now, the market study service providers, they don't work at risk. So you will have to fund it upfront, and you would have to then recover it through the capital grant. So in your financial modeling and your CAPEX costing, you'll have to cost the cost of that market study into your CAPEX cost. So you will have to pay it upfront and claim it when the grant is disbursed to you. I hope that answers your question. You know, like the professional team, you can get your entire professional team to work at risk with you. You give them a letter of appointment, they work at risk for you until you get the grant money, and then you sort of back pay them for the work they've done, and you continue back paying them until they're fully paid, until they get their work up to a point where the project is ready for construction. I hope that answers your question. And market studies are also, I mean, the cost varies so much. You must just find the smartest company that does market studies at the lowest cost, but that gives you what the SHRA needs. I think that answers all the questions. If there's no responses to them or no further questions, we're going to move on to continue with the program. John, you will tell me if you see any hands. I don't think I see anything. It's okay. Okay, so let's move on to the target market and the Lucky, you have a question? Lucky, do you have your hand up?
Sorry, I think I muted everyone. Let me
Okay,
just see
sorry.
if
I
I
just
can
want to switch my
open.
fan off quickly.
Okay, like you have enabled your mic. Let's just wait for Hafi to return.
Okay, thank you, John. Okay, Rafi, can I follow up the question, please?
Yes, you can.
Yeah, thank you for your answer. I just wanted to confirm the time frame, like maybe if you start with the 100 units, then you have to reach 300 to 500 units. Then do you have maybe a time frame, maybe of 5 years or 10 years to reach that those units? How much time frame do you need in order to reach that requirement? If you start maybe by 100, for example.
So Lucky, it's very dependent on your organization and the decision it takes as to how fast it wants to grow. You can get a new SHI with very seasoned governance structure, equity to put a management structure in place ahead of a first project, many opportunities of land to develop. And those guys would have an aggressive growth strategy because the capacity is there. So it's very much dependent on your capacity of your board and capacity for you to bring in a management team that can develop these projects. So there's no one answer. In your case, you need to get really good capacity into your board. You would have to get someone to act as your CEO that is very strong in the property development space. And that person would have to look for land opportunities to at least get you to 300 units so that you can be sustainable from the beginning. And then once you've got that experience of doing a first project of about 300 units, you can then decide how aggressive your growth strategy is. But generally what happens is while you're packaging a first project, you're looking for land for your second project. When the first project goes into construction, you're packaging the second project. When your construction ends of your first project, you're going into construction of your second project. Now, these happen in about 3-year cycles because it takes you about 18 months to package a project. It takes you about 24 months to deliver a project. That is if you're doing 300 to 500 units, meaning that every 3 years you should be in construction. I hope that answers your question, Lucky, but it's all dependent on how fast you want to grow, how big you want to grow, what is the demand in the area where you are planning to have your SHI, and what is your capacity to be able to develop and take on the stock. The real challenge lies not in the development, but in the take on of the stock. You find that SHIs can't take on too many units too fast because the management arrangement takes time. You tenant people, you can only tenant so many people in a month. And once you've done that, you've got to get those people into the social housing management behavior. And then you've got to bring on new people and add and add and add. So it's not necessarily development. You can find a big developer that can build 10,000 units in one shot because they have the capacity. But you as a social housing institution cannot take on 10,000 units in 1 year. It's virtually impossible. because we're not at Trafalgar Properties and we have this, we're dealing with poorer people and we're dealing with this community development service that we offer that takes time to integrate people into a community. I hope it answers your question. Are you okay, Lucky?
I have muted him, so I suspect that he will raise any further on the chat line.
Okay, fine. So to move on, we are going to talk about the target market and the rentals. The income band is 1850 to 22,000, but the policy and the SHRA requirements is that we break those income groups into 5 distinct subsegments of the target market, so that as an SHI, you don't only cater for the highest income group in the secondary market and the highest income group in the primary market, and then you leave out the lower incomes. So the SHRA expects a mix, and if your market study says that the SHRA mix is not suitable, the SHRA will only consider a change to this mix if your market study says that in your area the mix should be different. So there's 2 target markets. There's a primary target market of people earning between 1850 and 67. You've got to have 30% of your units in that target market. And then 70% of your units must go to your secondary market, which is 6701 to 22,000. The way in which, and remember, these percentages are not willy-nilly, right? It reflects the market nationally to a certain degree, but it reflects a cross-subsidization model, because remember, the person earning 1850, their rental is going to be 550 Rand a month. But your cost to manage the unit and to pay your debt is 1550. So you can already see that the rental coming in from your 5% in your primary market is not covering your cost by 1,000 Rand per month. Therefore, it's the higher income groups that are going to pay the 7,000 Rand a month, the people earning between 15 and 22,000, that will pay an average rental of 5,400 a month, that is going to cross-subsidize that primary market who are not paying enough to cover your cost. So it's a cross-subsidization model, and that's why you have more of your target market sitting in a secondary target market, which is higher than your cost, because they will subsidize that 30% that are not covering your cost. So there's a thinking behind this, but it is reflective of the market, mainly in the large metropolitan areas. So I just want to use Ron Pesk as an example. In Port Elizabeth, we find that the leading SHI there says they don't have, in the 15,000 to 22,000, they don't have 25% of the target market in their municipality. They find that the private sector is playing in this space, in the rental space of 5,500 a month. So they always ask the SHRA to reduce the 25% to 15% or 10% and increase the lower income bands, because there's more demand there. So I'm just giving you an example of, in a smaller municipality, you would find that that top end is not necessarily as big as what the SHRA is recommending. But in the metropolitan areas, you don't have any problem in using this as a mix. So to talk further to this slide, yes, this is the mix. The SHRA also doesn't expect you to put the smallest units for the cheapest rental. So that 5%, generally what the SHIs would do is they give the smallest unit to the 1850 to 350, from the 35 to 67, also a smallest unit, and then give the 2 bedrooms to the secondary market. But remember, we said earlier that we work according to household size. It doesn't mean that the poorest people have the smallest household. So we also want a small 2 bedroom for that 5% that are earning 1850 that can only pay 550 a month. So we want you to, as much as we've cross-subsidized these percentages across incomes, we want you to cross-subsidize your units and not only give the smallest units to the poorest people. That's also what we expect. In all of this year, there was a question around rent setting and rent increases. So the average rental that you will get per unit, if you average out these 5 subsegments of the market with the 5 different average rentals, you get to an average rental of 3377, or I think it's 3355. So that would be your average rental that you would earn. Your average cost is about 1650, plus you've got to service your debt because the SHA gives you close to 65% of the grant would be grant, and then 35% you have to go and find the debt. And so you've got to service that debt over the next 20 years. Once the debt is paid, yes, then that rental, the surplus that you make on the rental will have to be invested into a new project that you build. So this is what we work on. This is the target market. This is the mix. And I've just added in the type of unit mix that you've got to bring in to talk to these markets and these the incomes and the rentals. And we house from singles to families to single female-headed households. We do affordability checks. So remember, your gross income is not the income that we only look at. The gross income is what we look at from a qualification, a subsidy qualification point of view. Your gross income must be within this range. But it's your net income and your net disposable income that will tell us whether you can afford to pay rent. And so that is important. Then we do allow for rent escalations. If it's inflationary based, generally the SHRA is happy with it. But if you face above inflation increases in certain aspects of your cost, then you have to motivate to the SHRA as to why your increase is above inflation. And they will then approve it on the basis of solid evidence. You'll have to provide evidence that, yes, the municipality put your rates and taxes up by above inflation, and therefore your increase in your rent is above inflation. So I hope that answers the rental rent setting. We also have 2 rent setting methodologies. One is income based and one is based on the size of the unit or the square meterage of the unit. We don't recommend that any of you use income-based rentals because it's a source for rent boycotts. If you understand, an income-based rental is if the person earning 1850 will pay 30% of their income for a 2-bedroom unit. And for the same 2-bedroom unit, the person earning 22,000 will pay 5417. The neighbors get talking to each other. The one says, but we have the exact same unit. You're paying 500, I'm paying 5,000. It doesn't make sense. Let's boycott, right? So we don't recommend income-based rentals. On the other hand, the per square meterage rental is the one that we recommend because we say to you, you are getting a 2-bedroom unit with no cupboards, with no finishes, and you're paying 550. And by the way, your 2-bedroom is 35 square meters. Then the guy earning 22,000 that's paying 5,000, he's getting a 60 square meter 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom unit with extra cupboards and any extra finishes. So he can see why he's paying 5,400, and the person paying 550 can see why they're paying 550. That is the type of rental that we think is the safest route to go, the least risky route to go. John, can we move on? So it's inner city, urban localities. We are not a rural housing program. I just want to make that quite clear. It's a inner city, urban locality where we're close to amenities. That's where it happens. We take big pride in our urban design and layout and our aesthetics. You saw the video and you saw the pictures of some projects. You saw the other picture I showed you. Those are important factors for us, what it looks like, what the robustness of the finishes, the way the buildings are orientated to maximize the use of the sun, and all those good things we take into account. We know it's rental tenure, we know it's medium to high density, we know it includes nano bachelor 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms. We know that it is close to amenities, and where it's not as close to amenities as possible, we build those amenities into our project. We spoke about Brickfields, where they have shops in the project, they have a creche in the project, They have learning rooms, what you call the homework classrooms. They have computer rooms and that. And the rentals are between 550 and 770. On the previous slide, you saw different rentals. Those are just average rentals. It doesn't give you the range of the lowest income to the highest income, which is the actual rentals. So that is the range of the rentals. Can we move on, John? I mean, it's a basic formula, guys. There's a tenant. That tenant pays rent to occupy a unit. Basic principle, but most important principle. And the principle is that the tenant will pay rent for a unit that is habitable, that is maintained, where the services have come into. So it's not only that when tenants don't pay rent, we say they're bad people, because sometimes us as SHIs don't do the right thing. We can't send out a bill on time. We can't get their account right. We don't do our maintenance. Then we expect tenants to pay. So it's a two-way street. Can we move on, John? So in the implementation, so we spoke about the characteristics, the principles, the target market around the social housing program and the policy. On an implementation point of view, we talk about the restructuring zones. That's the main instrument. We're going to talk about the funding instrument, which is the capital grant called the CCG. And then we're going to talk about the legislative framework. So what is the acts and the regulations that apply to social housing, and what does it prescribe on all of us? And then we're going to talk about the institutional arrangements that's created that allow social housing to be delivered. So if we move on to the spatial instrument, and I'm not going to dwell on it because we spoke, we're going to talk about the legislative framework. So you can see it's quite complex, right? But let's break it down. There's a constitution and a section of the constitution that gives everyone in South Africa the right to housing. That is enshrined in the Housing Act of 1997. Begins to say, how do we make that provision of the constitution implementable? That Housing Act then gives rise to the various housing instruments, which is contained in the Housing Code. So the Housing Code, I mean, the National Department of Human Settlements has many housing instruments. There's RDP, BNG, there's what you call EDBS, there's CRU program, there's FLIS program, there's the gap housing program, there's many housing instruments, there's site and service, there's the self-help one. They give rise to those instruments. Each instrument is contained in the Housing Code. We have our own program, which is contained in the Housing Code as well. So those are the founding pieces of legislation and policies and programs that oversee our social housing program. If we look at social housing as a rental housing program, we have a policy. We've spoken about all the attributes of the policy in the last slides that I've just been through this whole morning. That's what's in the policy. The policy gave effect to guidelines because the Act wasn't promulgated in time, and National Treasury had funds to spend on the program, so we had to write guidelines so that money could flow and the first units could be built. In 2008, we had the Act. The Act gave rise to regulations. The regulations are in the main around SHI accreditation, ODA accreditation, compliance monitoring, and what happens if you don't comply, right? Once you've got the capital grant, and it sets out the whole system for the capital grant. And then underpinning the regulations, you could have a set of rules. The SHRA has the right to make rules and issue notices and directives and instructions and so on to social housing institutions or to ODAs. The cross-cutting legislation is the Rental Housing Act, because we're in the business of rental housing. We've got to comply with the Rental Housing Act as a landlord. The tenants have to comply as a tenant. And then there's the PI Act, which has got to do with the evictions, when we do evictions, and the fact that people have a right to housing and the municipality must come in if we've evicted someone that falls within the subsidy bracket, that person needs to be housed. So there's that act that comes into play. The other rental housing programs, the CRU program and the institutional subsidy program, they have their own policy program and guidelines as well. We're not going to take you through that. I also raised the provincial and municipal legislation for the sole reason that we're using public funds in social housing. So the Public Finance Management Act comes into play and the Municipal Finance Management Act comes into play. And when we get municipal land from the municipality to build social housing, because that's one place where we could get land that's more affordable than buying land on the open market in the private sector, then the Municipal Systems Act, Structures Act, and Property Rating Act comes into play. We also, as social housing institutions, because of our subsidies, rentals that we offer, and it being so low, and our revenue is constrained, we also say to the municipality, please give us a special rate on our rates and taxes that we pay, or on our utilities that we buy from you. Because we are a social housing institution, we're not for profit, and our revenue is constrained, we're below market rentals. So then the Property Rates Act also comes into play. So this is a legislative framework in a nutshell. Can we move on, John? So the Social Housing Act, to take you very quickly through what it's all about, it sets out the definition and principles of social housing. I've taken you through that this morning. I took you through the principles, the characteristics, the intention of the program, the definition of the program, all of that we've had. And then the second thing it does is it sets out roles and responsibilities. And it sets out roles and responsibilities for government, the three spheres of government, and then for SHIs and for ODAs. So if you look at national, it has to make policy, it has to finance the program, it has to make legislation for the program, and it has to regulate the entity that it is set up to the program, which is the SHRA. It's supposed to do research and address issues of growth and development of the sector. It must provide capacity building to the sector, which it has delegated to the SHRA, which is exactly what we're doing today, is building capacity. And then it must approve the regulations and the investment plan of the SHRA. So the SHRA is to give a plan on regulation. How is it going to regulate the sector on a yearly basis? And how many units is it going to fund to the sector on a yearly basis? And the National Department approves those plans. And then obviously it monitors the performance of the SHRA as the leading entity to administer the program itself. From a provincial point of view, they are responsible for consumer awareness and education and protecting consumer rights. They do that through the Rental Tribunal. They must also facilitate the growth and sustainability of the sector. How do they do that? They must support projects. They must coordinate government at a provincial level, both national, the SHRA, the agencies, and the municipalities. And they must also make land and buildings available to SHIs. They must deal with conflict resolution between SHIs and municipalities. Sometimes the SHIs got land from the municipality. They don't do what they're supposed to do. There's a dispute between the two. The province Department of Human Settlements must intervene in such cases. They must monitor the social housing projects. And how do they do that? They do that in concert with the SHRA, because the SHRA is responsible for monitoring projects and monitoring performance of the stock. They must submit RZs to the National Minister for gazetting. They must approve a component of the grant. You will see that the capital grant is made up of two components, a provincial component and a national component. They've got to endorse the provincial component of the grant before the SHRA can fund any institution. They must build capacity of the municipalities, and they must not interfere with the governance or management of SHIs. So if an SHI wants to do evictions because tenants are not paying rent, the MEC of the province must not come and say there's a moratorium on evictions, because that is tantamount to interfering, or saying that the board must be made up of A, B, C, and D, and not allow the SHI to choose their own board of directors or their own CEO. That is what we talk to in terms of interference. From a municipal point of view, they must plan for social housing in their IDP. They must establish if there's demand in their municipal areas, and then they must encourage the development of the stock. They must provide access to land and buildings, and they must provide the bulk services. So where there's land availability in an RZ, they must prioritize water, sewer, electricity, and all those things that is needed. And then they must have performance agreements with SHI. So if an SHI builds in their municipal area and they access municipal land, they are supposed to also have an agreement to say, I've given you 5 hectares of land, you need to give me 550 units in return. It needs to be developed over 3 years, and this is what we want from you, but we're giving you the land. So that's the type of performance agreement that should be in place. And then lastly, they must identify restructuring zones when they do their spatial development frameworks. Can we move on, John? Then there's the Social Housing Regulatory Authority, and they've got wide powers in the Social Housing Act. They've got to, there's a provision on how the department gives effect to the establishment of the SHRA and how they monitor the SHRA, and then the powers and the functions that they give to the SHRA to invest in social housing institutions, to regulate social housing institutions, to accredit social housing institutions and ODAs, and what happens when there's non-compliance by SHIs. They've got far-reaching powers to take your business away from you, place you under administration, transfer the stock, and so on. There's also provision where they have to have agreements with provinces and agreements with the NHFC as the debt funder. Excuse me. And then the next part is where they give recognition to social housing institutions. So the Act makes provision for the establishment of social housing institutions, how they must behave, what must they do to become accredited, what their functions and roles and responsibilities are, and the responsibilities in terms of reporting to the SHRA from a regulatory point of view, and how they must comply with the regulations. And then obviously there's a small section on ODAs to say how they can participate in the program. And the last section is really just general provisions, which is not necessarily important to us in the session. Can we move on, John? Then we have the social housing regulations. I just want to take you very quickly through it. Broadly, it deals with application, the qualifying criteria, and accreditation. The third chapter is once you're accredited and you've been granted a project and you've given the capital grant, how do they monitor your compliance? It's through a number of things, like you would have to report quarterly, you would be subject to tenant audits, subject to building condition audits, you would have to give your annual financial statements in on an annual basis. They will check that you're registered as a company with the CIPC and that you've submitted all your returns. On an annual basis, you will have to show that you have insured the stock. You know, you'd have to get approval for your rent increases on an annual basis. So there's a number of things that happen either on a quarterly basis, on an annual basis, on a 3-yearly basis as to what you have to comply with. And if you don't comply, there is a remedial action grant that can kick in. And if you use that and you still don't comply, they will place you under administration. They will take the stock away from you, give it to a performing SHI and wind you down. Then there's a code of conduct for SHIs that they have to comply with from a good governance, financial management, property management, tenant management perspective. And then there's the criteria for the capital grant. So how do you access that capital grant? What do you have to do to be able to access it? And what do you have to do to be able to get it? And then number 6 is just a general section of what they would do if you don't perform and they place you under administration. The whole procedure of doing a forensic investigation, applying for administration, and what they do during the administration process. And if administration doesn't work, what do they do in terms of winding you down and taking the stock away from you? And then chapter 7 deals with the agreements between the SHRA and the municipality, SHRA and the province, and SHRA and the NHFC. And then obviously the last chapter is just general. Can we move on, John? So there was a question earlier, many questions around what do you need to become accredited? And there's 7 areas that the SHRA looks at in terms of accreditation. They want to know that you have legal form. They want to know that you have good governance in place, not only from a board point of view, but from a governance policy point of view. They want to see your financial sustainability, so your operating systems for financial management. They want, your tenant management systems, property management systems, and property development arrangements. So that are the 7 KPIs around which accreditation happen, but it happens to be the same KPIs under which they monitor compliance, under which your code of conduct would happen, and the investment criteria is also built around these 7 areas. Can we move on, John? Then other primary legislation, we spoke about the Rental Housing Act, absolutely critical. It's almost as equal to the importance of the Social Housing Act, because you're a landlord as an SHI, you have roles and responsibilities to meet, and that becomes important. Then there's the PI Act, especially when you're doing an eviction, that comes into play. And then there's the Consumer Protection Act, which gives you responsibilities in terms of how you treat your tenants and your lease agreements and all of that. So we move on to the first instrument, which is called the restructuring zone. So this map just gives you a very succinct picture of what we're talking about when we talk about location of your project. You would see there's the CBD of this particular municipality, and within that CBD, that big white dot is your restructuring zone. And within that zone, you can see that there is a public transport system, the red block coming out. It would show you, if you had to enlarge the map, you would see the shops there, you would see the schools there, you would see the hospitals there, the clinics, all of those good things, and it gives you its locality to others. So this CBD then would be a perfect hub for a restructuring zone, because it meets all the requirements of the spatial instrument that we want to implement. Can we move on, John? So in effect, what we're saying is it's there to assist in rectifying the spatial dislocation that we saw in that other picture earlier on today. Social housing will be located in specific defined localities in the main urban, which has been defined as areas of opportunity. It's largely economic opportunity, where the poor have limited or inadequate access to accommodation, and where the provision of social housing can contribute to redressing the situation. The primary objectives is creation of good urban environments, redress past spatial planning dispensation, regenerate areas, especially where there's urban decay, where you have those old dilapidated buildings in the old CBDs, dealing with rapid urbanization and the mobility rates of people, because people move around from province to province in search of jobs, and then to deal with market failure. So currently we have about 73 RZs in all the metros. We have 138 RZs in another 38 local municipalities, and they're all located in about, I don't think it's 6 provinces anymore. I think it's about 7 or 8 of the 9 provinces now. Can we move on, John? Same picture, where we saw that picture with the main road and the, wealthy people on the one side and poor people on the other side. That's what we want to reverse. Can we move on? This is another picture showing how dense the Soweto area is, and on the opposite side you see the leafy suburbs. So it's the same picture, and there's a mine dump that separates Soweto from the Sandton of this world. We move on. Same picture, we saw that earlier. This is a road now separating it. The other time it was like a bush a buffer strip that separated the two. Move on. Same picture. So social housing can also happen in a mega project. A mega project or a catalytic project is a project that has over 5,000 residential units in it. So you could have RDP, you could have FLIS, you could have social housing, you could have crew in one project, right? And at the end of the day, it depends on how whoever's driving this, if it's the HDA or if it's a province or a municipality that's driving this big mega project, they will decide what goes in first, second, third, or fourth. And there's an opportunity then for social housing institutions to become part of a mega project where the big developer that's responsible for the whole mega project will bring in an SHI to do the social housing component of it. Let's move on, John. Okay, we've done the video already. We're moving on to the second instrument. The second instrument is our funding instrument. So this is how the cookie crumbles. We have two components to our grant. We have the institutional subsidy, which we call the top-up subsidy. Today's value, it's worth 187,257 Rand. And that together with the restructuring capital grant, which is worth 243,051, the two added together gives you your total consolidated capital grant of 426,308 Rand. So that is the grant, and the only requirement is that 30% goes to the primary market and 70% goes to the secondary market, and that there is an additional grant for every percentage you go over the 30%. But it's minimal, it's like worth 749 Rand. So it's something that you shouldn't be looking at as a new institution. Very old institutions with 6,000 or 7,000 or 8,000 units could potentially start looking at that because they've got the model right, they've got the experience, the SHI is working well, they can take that risk. Because the 30% market, as you could see from those income groups, is an extremely risky market, especially the 5% at the lower end, people earning 1,850 to the 3,000. Those are people that are not in formal employment or permanent employment. And so the incomes are very precarious. And so the more you go down into that market, the more riskier your rent collection becomes, and then it threatens the sustainability of your organization. So this is the capital grant as we know it. Can we move on, John? This is what the funding model looks like. So for an SHI, about 40% is your restructuring capital grant, another 25% is your top-up subsidy, that provincial piece. All in all, the grant adds up to about 65%, and you've got to go take 35% debt. In the ODA model, which is a private for-profit, so the SHI is a not-for-profit entity. Your ODA is a PTY Ltd for-profit private company with profit motives. They get the same grant. Oh, John, this slide has got a mistake on it. Then they must provide own equity of 20%, not 10%. And the loan or the debt portion is then reduced to 15%. So that's the only difference where SHI takes on 35% debt. The ODA is required to put in own equity, cash equity of 20% of the total development cost and take 15% debt. That is the difference between the two. The one is a for-profit. The ODA can get out at some stage of the program. The SHI is in it forever, and the day they decide they don't want to be in it, the SHRA takes it back from them. Can we move on, John? So this is how the capital financing work. You will get your restructuring capital grant and your provincial top-up, which is that 428,000 Rand. And then you would either get just the debt portion Or if you're doing a very big project, let's talk about a project of say 1,500 units. You may find the NHFC says, look, I won't give you all of the debt, but I'm willing to share the debt with another debt funder. So they go in with DBSA or they go in with ABSA Bank or Nedbank, and they start structuring the debt situation in terms of senior debt, junior debt, and other equity funding or mezzanine funding or bridge funding that may make the project work. But this scenario is in a very complex, big project like the one I spoke about in Newtown, where there's 1,700 units that was built in one go. The normal funding model is the previous slide where you just go for your grant and you take debt, and the debt covers the entire shortfall of funding on your project. But the minute you go very, very big projects over 1,000 units, you're going to find this type of scenario playing itself out. And that's why I produced this slide, just to show you that it can become complicated if you're doing a very big project. Can we move on? So this is what makes up, John, okay, so this is also a slide that I have updated that but I'm going to talk to it. So what makes up your CAPEX of a project when you're developing your first project? It's the cost of the land. It's the cost of transferring the land, your conveyancing fee. It's the cost of the services. So everything that you're putting in under the ground, your reticulation for your electricity, your reticulation for your water, your sewer reticulation. If it is that you're building a project and you're required to build a road coming into your project, it would be that roads, and then obviously with roads, stormwater becomes an issue. It's the stormwater cost, right? But essentially, it shouldn't be bulk services, because the municipality should provide you bulk services up to a point, and then you need to take the services from that point onto the periphery of your site, and then you take the services into each of your buildings. All of that goes in under the ground, and that comes at a cost. Then there's your top structure cost to build the actual unit and finish it off. And then there's your professional fees, so your architect, your QS, your different types of engineers, structural and civil, electrical engineer, your health and safety professional, your town planner that does your zoning, if zoning is needed, if consolidation or subdivision is required. It's all of those costs get built into the professional fees, and then it's your NHBRC enrollment of your units cost. So I'm using an example, right? And this is just an example. So your total cost then comes to 420,000 per unit. Now, these figures are still on the old grant, so and needs to be updated, but we're just using it as an example. So 420,000 is what you need to, it's an all-in cost per unit, and that's what you need to raise. In the case of an SHI, the grant is now 426,000, but it was 328 last year. So let's just make as if we're working on last year. Then you get the 328 subsidy, and your shortfall is 91,000 per unit, which you go to the NHFC for. That makes up your 420. In the case of an ODA, you get the same grant. You put your 20% equity in, you put your debt funding in of your 15%, and you get to your 420. That makes up your capital cost, right? Now, if you look on the operational side of things, you're going to get an average rental of 3,377 per unit per month. You've got to take off your bad debts, and you've got to take off your vacancy provision. So essentially what you're only collecting is 3,208 per month. So what are your expenses? You have direct property costs. Your direct property cost is your health and safety certification, your rates and taxes, your insurance, your security, your maintenance provisions, your staff that are directly on site working in the project. That makes up that basket of costs that comes to 950 a month. Then you have overheads. Your overheads is your staff cost, your office, your computers, your stationery, all your running cost is 600 per unit per month. So that, and your bond repayment is 1,550 per month on that 30% that you win, 35% that you win, the 91,000 that you went to borrow from the bank. So all in all, your cost comes to 3,100 a month. Your surplus that you make is 108 Rand per month. Can you see that this is a marginal business? It's a tight business. You are constrained. Your rental revenue is constrained because you got this big grant. You expected to offer below market rentals. So this business is not a business for sissies. It's a business that has to be run on a very cost-conscious basis. It's a marginal business because of the constrained revenue. And you have to manage your cost very tightly because you just about break even on an annual basis. Things get better as you progress, and as you service your debt, you will have more surpluses, but those surpluses cannot be used in the case of an SHI to pay anybody or to spend on anything else but putting it into your next project that you're going to build as equity. Move on, John. And I'm sure there would be questions. Let's do the questions in the chat on this financial scenario. That was the capital grant, right? So we showed what the grant quantum was worth. We showed what the funding arrangement is, who funds what. We also showed what makes up the cost of a project and what the OPEX is on the management side of the project. So you got a sense of the CAPEX and how it was going to be funded, and you got a sense of the revenue and how that revenue was going to be cut across the expenditure items. The second grant that the SHRA has is an institutional investment grant. It's given to SHIs and ODAs that need support. It has 5 key components to it. One is a pre-accreditation grant. This is a grant that is given to those that are seeking accreditation. Those that are not successful, they've applied for accreditation, they haven't been successful, and the grant kicks into, SHRA appoints a service provider to assist them to get to accreditation. Then there's a project feasibility grant. So you've got accreditation now, you've got your first piece of land, you're packaging in the land and you're submitting an application for the capital grant, but you don't quite meet all of the requirements of that grant. And so the SHRA gives you a project feasibility grant, and that feasibility grant will assist you to package your project so that it can be fully funded by the SHRA in terms of the grant funding. Once you've now got your project agreement in place, you go into construction, you almost finish construction, you don't have income yet because they're still building your project, but you need some staff, you need foot soldiers on the ground. The SHRA then comes in and it gives you a staff gear up grant for certain critical positions. For instance, you will need a finance manager because the grant, the flowing of the grant money or the drawdowns of the grant money requires financial sign off and so on. So that makes that person important. That person will also set up the rental management system for when the units are handed over and run the financial affairs of the organization. You will need a letting officer who will start marketing the units while it's being constructed. They will screen applicants, they will collect rent deposits, they will sign lease agreements so that when the project is handed over, that units do not stand empty. They are let because there are people that have paid their deposits, that have signed lease agreements, that are ready to move in. So those are the types of staffing that the SHRA would fund upfront. You would have to apply for it. They would fund it upfront whilst you're waiting for your rental income to start. Then you are managing stock and you have a problem. Maybe it's rent collection problem, or there's a staffing problem, or there's some problem, and you come to the SHRA and you say, I'm struggling with this thing. I need a service provider to come in, someone experienced that can help me sort out this problem. The SHRA will then give you a service provider who will come and help you sort out that problem. But the remedial action grant doesn't necessarily only come because you ask for it. It can be forced on you as well by the SHRA. The SHRA says you're reporting, you don't comply with rent collection rates, we're sending a service provider in. Clearly there's a problem. The service provider is going to come and help you sort it out. Now, if the remedial action grant does not work, and you still have a problem and you still don't meet the benchmarks set by the social housing regulations, then you will be placed under administration. That is a different process under the regulatory system. The last grant that they do is a general capacity building grant. It's like today. Today it's general capacity building for anybody that's interested. And they will run it across many topics. It could be governance, it could be how to do maintenance management, how to do tenant management, how to do community development. It could be any of those things. It is informed by trying to get more people into the sector and more SHIs to be accredited. But it also comes from another angle. If there's many SHIs reporting to the SHRA and not meeting the regulations around one particular thing, let's call it rent collection rates, are low amongst 20 SHIs of the 50 SHIs. The SHRA will then look at those stats and say, no, we need to do general training on rent collection for those 20 SHIs. So that is your general capacity building grant. John, do you want to add anything to this section before I move on?
No, I think you've covered that adequately, Happy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks. Can we move on? So now we're into the last instrument, which is our institutional arrangements instrument. I'm just going to only take you through the overview, and then we're going to stop, take questions, and tomorrow we're going to take you through each of the entities that has a role to play in the institutional environment, and we're going to show to you how the intergovernmental arrangement is structured so that there's a one-stop shop. You don't have to talk to the province and the municipality separate and the SHRA separate and that. You find them in one place. We're going to talk about that arrangement. So the institutional arrangements are, there's a few categories. You have the 3 spheres of government. I've highlighted the municipality, local municipality, because they catalyze social housing. There is nothing any SHI can do without the local municipality, besides the SHRA and others. They catalyze social housing because they demarcate RZs. They've got to find social housing partners to deliver on the land that they've allocated for social housing. And so they play a catalytic role insofar as social housing institutions are concerned and ODAs are concerned. Then we've got the housing agencies of government. Obviously, the crucial one is the SHRA. They regulate you, they accredit you, and they invest in you. They give you the capital grant. So without them, you are dead in the water. You do need the NHFC to provide debt funding. As a new social housing institution coming into the sector, it will be very difficult to knock on Absa Bank or Nedbank or the commercial bankers' doors as a new entity because you've got no track record in developing, you've got no track record in managing. They will find it very difficult to fund you. So the National Department of Human Settlement set up a National Housing Finance Corporation to provide developmental funding to entities like SHIs and ODAs. So they're important because they become the debt funder in most of the new entities with first projects. Yes, sometimes they fund you forevermore, but sometimes you become big and strong and you can get better rates from the commercial banks, or you can structure better deals with them with other funders. And then there's the HTA, who has a very specific role to play in social housing, and that is that they must make land and buildings available and work with municipalities to prioritize infrastructure and services and bulk services and so on. So they become an entity of government that is also important to us as a sector. And then I've highlighted delivery agents because none of those government spheres of government or government agencies can deliver social housing. None of them. So they are merely enablers. The only guys that can deliver and manage stock is SHIs and ODAs. So they are a critical component. Without them, nothing happens. And then they themselves are dependent on service providers. They need architects, quantity surveyors, engineers, contractors, developers. On the management side, they even need more expertise, security companies, and so on to do their work. So the private sector then becomes an important stakeholder in the bigger scheme of things. John, can you take me to the next slide? I just want to see if I stop here or if there's another one. Yeah, this is just a picture of the institutional arrangements. It looks complex, guys, in this picture, but it's just saying the same thing. There's national, give birth to the SHRA. The SHRA works with the provinces and municipalities. The municipalities and the provinces give rise to social housing institutions or ODAs. And on the side, we have the HDA giving us land and services. We have the Rental Housing Tribunal dealing with consumer education and disputes. And we have a structure called the PSC, which is a provincial steering committee that brings all three spheres of government together. And the NHFC and TUF that provides debt funding. On the other side of the coin, you know, we need the RZs, we need the land, we need incentives for reduced rates and so on. And we need development agreements between SHIs, ODAs, the debt funders, and the SHRA, and so on. So this is just a picture of how the government is set out against the funders and the SHIs and ODAs. John, check if there's one more slide I need to do. So this is where I stop. John, if you can help me just do any reflection or any more final questions, we'll take those and we'll close off. Tomorrow we will start on the institutional arrangements, and it's the whole program for tomorrow. We cover every entity, the role they play, and we will focus on SHIs and ODAs tomorrow so that you get a good understanding of how to become accredited, how to establish a business, how to manage the stock, how to get the grant, how to package your project. All of that at a high level will be covered tomorrow. And then we'll do a little evaluation at the end of the day. But we will also start with reflection tomorrow before I go into it. But I think let's reflect now and let's see if there's any burning issues that you'd like to reflect on based on what we covered today.
All right, I've just unmuted everyone, and I see there's a hand up from Sitembiso. If you can just unmute yourself and ask your question. I'll also check if there's anything else on the chat line. And Nosi, you can come after Sitembiso. Sitembiso? Okay, I think we're having a problem with Sitembiso's line. Nosi, maybe if you, oh, there you are.
Sorry about that. I'm being a nuisance, but yeah, I do have questions. Sorry again. I guess the first one is in regards to how was profit made? Because obviously she ran us through the OPEX and the CAPEX, but I know the models are possibly different for the SHI and the ODA. Obviously, she spoke of the when she ran through us through the OPEX, that surplus gets reinvested if you're an SHI. And obviously, she said after you've paid back your debt service over 20 years, those proceeds are also paid back to obviously a new scheme, call it that. So I just want to understand the profit. Or in my head, I'm just thinking is possibly that you are making your money from. Let's not say make your money, keep the lights on, you know. Because obviously I'm providing a service. I just want to understand how the remuneration structure works. Is it possibly that you're getting it from the service that you extend? And secondly, she also spoke of if you run into problems, they would allocate a certain service provider for you. I was just wondering, how do you possibly get on that list? And lastly, it just pertains to joining. How do you actually is there an email I can send to someone where obviously where I could possibly start an SHI and ODA? Yeah. Thanks for your help.
John, do you want me to answer as they come, or do you want to take a few?
Yeah, I think if we can just deal with one at a time.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, so Simbi, so please don't feel that you can't ask many questions. Ask as many questions that you have in your head. We're here to try and assist you and to create a full package of understanding. So no question is stupid. No, you can ask 100 questions if you have 100 questions. We're going to make the time for it. So don't feel as if you're hogging this space. We want you to engage us. On the ODA, and let's just be frank, how do you make money? So if you're smart, you are going to make some money in the development, aren't you? Because you're going to arrange the development cost in a way that you can make some money. I'm talking of an ODA now, even an SHI. You know, we have SHIs that come in with the professional team all-in cost being 15% of the total development cost. Then you have an SHI, the picture I showed you in Port Elizabeth, they come in at 6.6%. Then you ask yourself the question, how did that guy do it? And why is the other guy coming in at 15%? So there's money to be made in the development. Let's not run away from it. If you're an SHI and there's money to be made in the development, the only difference is you're going to invest it in your in the SHI to be used when you build your next project. That will be an equity contribution. If you're an ODA, you're allowed to take that money out. If you make that surplus from your OPEX, the 108 Rand per unit per month, you take that money. You can take it as profit. That's the difference. During the management side of things, so there isn't money to be made in that first 20 years. So you would find that the ODAs are interested in the development, the developer role where they make money, and generally they outsource the management to another company that will take on all that community development stress and threat of non-payment and working with people to budget and all of that. They generally take that because there's nothing in it for them. Years after 20 years, when the debt is paid up, there's money in for it. And at some stage, the SHA will pronounce on an exit strategy for ODAs. So if we use an example that the SHA comes up with a policy that says an ODA can exit after 20 years or 15 years, and they don't have to pay any grant back and they can go and sell off the project. If that ever comes, that would be the second space where an ODA would make money. But there isn't a pronouncement on that exit strategy there, but we know that they have to come up with one because that was one of the incentives for ODAs to come into the program. So that will still come, but for now, I can clearly say that if you're smart at the developer role, you can make money in the development. There's very little money to be made in the management side of things. And it's a very difficult business after the development because you've got those low income groups that you're working with. But it's doable and it's very successful where the SHIs are doing the right thing. So that's the first question you had about how do we make money. The remedial action grant that you spoke about and the service provider that comes in, generally you're going to report, the minute you get the capital grant and you accredited, the compliance monitoring kicks in and they're going to send you a spreadsheet and you're going to have to report across your project and across your whole organization to the SHRA every 3 months. They set your reporting against their benchmark. So their benchmark for rent collection is 95%. Their benchmark for vacancy is 2%. The minute you don't meet those benchmarks, you're in trouble with them, but you yourself are in trouble with yourself. You can come before the SHRA decides that they want you to get a remedial action grant. You can come and say, I see my rent collection going in the wrong. I've moved from 98 to 96%. I'm getting to the SHRA benchmark of 95. It's moving in the wrong direction. Give me someone to help me work out. Is it my systems? Is it my staffing? What is it that's creating? Is it that the tenants are not paying because we're not sending out correct bills? What is creating this problem? So you can ask for it because you see it coming. You're tracking trends. Or the SHRA says to you, I'm taking out my stick now. I'm giving you a service provider. You will fix up. That was your second question, and I hope that got that question right. And then who to contact for accreditation? John, I'm going to put on the last slide tomorrow. I'll put Sanele's contact details, and I will also put Chalombi's details for those that are interested in becoming an ODA. And I will put their email address and their phone numbers, and you can then contact them. They will send you the application pack. They will tell you exactly how the application process works. So, Simbiso, just put your hands up if you feel we're fine, or do you want to engage further on one of the questions that you feel I didn't quite respond?
Yeah, thanks for that. Can we just go back to the first one? I guess my other understanding is obviously, as you said, like it's a 3-year process. So let's say in this instance, I'm the developer and I'm the property manager. So working a project for 3 years, could we charge services, raise them within the scheme? You know, it's obviously what I'm saying, within your financial model, building that development management cost, and as SHI and ODA, keep the money because I am doing the work. You know, I can't just keep on reinvesting it. And even on the management side, raise my property management fee and take it as a company because we're doing that work. Yeah. I guess that is my last question. Thanks.
Yeah,
Thanks for the other questions. Yeah.
Yeah, that's 100% right. So the only thing is that you're going to put own equity up front, right? And you're going to package your project and establish your organization at a certain cost. You've put in time, it come at a cost. You keeping a track record of that cost. The capital cost that you're spending, the time that you're spending, or the cost associated with the project, you've got to build into your capex, so that when the SHRA money flows, you get your money back that you've invested into getting the project to that point. From an OPEX point of view, the model does allow you to build in cost prior to rental revenue, which you capitalize into your capex, and you also recover through the drawdowns that you get in the grant. So there's no expectation that anybody does anything for nothing. It's just that people will work at risk for at least 18 months. Because look, you're to package your project and get it ready to where you're almost ready for building plan approvals, where you're almost ready for your zoning is in place, your subdivision approval is imminent, all of those good things. It will take you a good 6 to 12 to 18 months to get there, meaning that many people are working at risk, but yes, they're coming at a cost. And when you get the feasibility grant, you can then recover you can pay that to some of the people that have put in. It won't be enough to cover everybody because I think it's worth about 750,000. And then you carry on working, your grant agreement gets signed, the SHRA acknowledges that you've done work, they immediately disburse 10% to you of the total grant. Then again, you back pay everybody that's put in work. So as you draw down, you get up to date with paying for every input that went into the project. And the same goes with the rental revenue. You would recover all that you've spent. You spend money on registering with the CIPC, all of that. But there's a financial model that the SHRA gives you, and there's financial hurdles that need to be met. And the model can only take a certain amount of cost. And you'll have to work within that ambit. So currently, I mean, I do quite a lot of financial modeling in my world. And so I worked out that if you go over 550 a unit, the model doesn't quite work. The financial, there's stress. Whether you're an ODA, because remember on the equity, the 20% equity, the SHRA is not expecting you to put in 20% equity with no return. So the model allows you to convert much of the equity into a shareholder loan with returns. And the returns can be up to prime or prime plus 4, depends on the cost, your capex cost, and what you can afford to do. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thanks a lot.
John, can we move on to the next question?
I think the NOSI is
Okay.
You've dealt with NOSI?
No.
Okay.
Cool. So I had put my first question on the chat. I wanted to just ask whether you've got any guidance in terms of what the mix of the unit sizes should be. So if you're developing 300 units or 500 units, what should the mix of those nanos, bachelor 1, 2, 3, in the total development? That's the one question. The second question is, someone mentioned that SHRA also considers student accommodation. I know this is like now something completely different. Can you please confirm if that is true or not? That does SHRA help with student accommodation, or that is not the case? Thank you.
Thanks, Nosi. So, John, if we can send out that the guidelines or the technical norms and standards book as part of the handouts. Nosi, and I'm not sure, I always try and remember the page. I think it's page 65 because it's a big thing. And yes, you should read through the whole thing because it tells you exactly what the specifications are for social housing. But I think it's page 60, between 65 and 69. You would find they tell you what the recommended mix of units are. But tomorrow morning when I start, I'm going to give you my view of what a recommended mix is. I've got one that I've done for other clients. I'm happy to share it with you and I'll put it up on the screen. I may even add it to our slides so that you can have it when you go away from the session. But I promise you, Nosi, I will put that up tomorrow morning for you. But we also have the technical norms and standards. I can't remember what the name of that booklet is. John, if you don't have it on hand, I'm happy to send it to you this evening. And that will be part of it. And Nosi, go through to that page 60 on, and you'll find a little table that tells you how you should be splitting your mix. Then student accommodation, there's been a long conversation between the National Department and the SHRA about doing student accommodation. At this point in time, we can report that we don't do student accommodation. It's not included in the social housing program. We do not fund student accommodation. If it comes, it will be publicized all over. It will be on the website and so on. I don't know where the discussions are. I don't know if John has maybe more information than me, but I know as we speak now, it's not included.
Okay, the last hand that I see is Motape. If you just unmute yourself.
No, thank you, John. And thank you for a lovely presentation and informative session. I did post my question on the chat, but I see it hasn't been responded to. In terms of the targeted areas, we are based in Hartbeespoort, and we've been in discussion with the SHRA from last year, and Hartbeespoort has been targeted as one of the smart mega cities that are going to be merged with Lanseria. And there's that disparity that we're trying to address in terms of housing development, because we have people living in shacks next door to people living in townhouses. And the future priorities is that they're going to increase on the opposite side of the dam with about 3.8 thousand units. So I just wanted to check with you if we fall within the scope of development, and that's one. And the second part is in terms of the institutional arrangement for the SHI. Would you rather we do an NPC or an NPO? And the last question would be in terms of the capacity, because we are a community and we've been here for at least 40 years. What type of skills would you be looking at? Thank you.
Thanks, Mutapi. So I would have to check the restructuring zone list. I undertake to check as soon as we're done. And then tomorrow morning when we open, I will report back to you. And then John, on your side, does it fall, in which province does that fall? Is it Gauteng still or not? I'm just not familiar with the area.
We are in Northwest, but on the border of Gauteng. But in terms of the smart city, mega city, there's going to be an integration between the two.
Okay, so John, I will look on the list if it's on the list, but if it's not on the list, I don't know if you guys have inside information as to whether the Northwest province is in the process of applying for that area to be an RZ if I don't find it on the list. But I'll engage you this afternoon, John, so that we have a cohesive answer on that tomorrow. Then you asked the question about NPO and NPC. I'm not sure that there's a difference, but we know that SHRs are registered as NPCs. NPCs has overtaken NPOs in the old days. So I hope I answer that question. You'll be an NPC. And then what skills do you need? Mutapi, are you coming tomorrow? Because can you hold it over? We're going to cover that in detail tomorrow.
Most definitely.
Good. Okay, so you get we cover the skills question tomorrow. And I will also cover the NPC question. So we'll show you the difference between an NPC and a PTY LTD and the benefits of each of them and the disadvantages of each of them. So that when you make your decision, you make an informed decision, because it's much more than not-for-profit versus for-profit. It's about taxation, it's about fundraising, it's about many things. And so I will try and take you, I don't have that detail on tomorrow, but I will add it in so that maybe when you guys walk away, before you attend the accreditation training session, you do have a bit more information and you don't wait for the training. I will do that
Just
in the
one
morning.
last question before you go, ma'am.
Sure.
In terms of land acquisition, I know you did say municipality land is also can be targeted if it's available. In an instance where it's private land and the landowners are saying the land is available, they have no use for the land, are you able to help us acquire that portion to extend to meet our targets?
So what happens in the case of the acquisition of private land? Firstly, I mean, the price has got to be right. You must put through your entire cost through the financial model to be able to see if the price is right, because you can't isolate one cost from another cost and think that I can spend 25% of the entire cost for land and it will work, because it's dependent on how much services cost is going to be. It's dependent on how much your top structure cost is going to be. So the price has got to be right when it comes to private land. The second thing is you ask about helping you. You've got to sign an offer to purchase that is valid for at least 6 months from the date that you sign the offer to purchase. Why do we say 6 months? Because it takes you about 3 months to become accredited, right? The SHRA is 90 days within which to come back to you with an answer. It's legislated. Then only when you become accredited as an SHI are you then eligible to apply for the capital grant. So what we say to a new SHI is try and get the private land at the back of a cigarette box, work out what percentage of the total cost. If we're saying 550 is the number, what percentage of 550 is the land? Is the bulk services available? Quick call to the municipality. The top structure we know goes at about 7,500, 8,500 rand per square meter. So we know what that cost is. And we know if we're coming to 550 or not. If we're coming to 550 or less, we know that that land cost is fine. Then you apply for accreditation, but you don't go to sleep or only focus on accreditation. While you're applying for accreditation and waiting that 90 days for the SHRA to come back to you, you appoint your professional team at risk and you start packaging that project, right? So that when accreditation comes through, it doesn't take you another 3 months to apply. You literally get your accreditation certificate and you apply for the capital grant because you've taken your project up to a point where it's ready for application. They then take another 90 days to come back to you. In that 90 days, you will potentially already get a feasibility grant if they find your project is fundable. And so you could even put in the offer to purchase that within the 6-month period, if the grant is approved, you will advance a percentage of the purchase price at that point in time, and then you will advance. So the first drawdown that you get after the grant is approved and agreed and signed, you will then pay for the land first.
Yes,
so that is how it works. And where it doesn't work well is when you're buying a building, because the seller never wants to wait that long unless it's in an area where the seller is not finding buyers and they're struggling to sell. They may say, okay, I'll give you a 6 to 8 month window. But it all depends on the seller if they're willing to sign an open OTP that is valid for 6 months, because you can only pay when the grant money flows.
Thank you.
Well, Rafi, those were the hands. I noticed, though, that there were a few more additional questions, comments on the chat line. I'm hesitant for us to deal with those. I'll just perhaps copy those off. And perhaps as we start tomorrow, we respond to those that we have not been able to respond, because I see that we have exceeded the time that we had scheduled for today, if that is okay. On that score, ladies and gents, that brings us to the conclusion of our session today. We will resume with the session again tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock. And yeah, enjoy the rest of your afternoon. We'll see you bright and early tomorrow. Thank you. May look off.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.